across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. What a rip-roaring show we've got for you today. Coming up in this hour... Yeah, we might be covering this. Yeah, Nigel Farage's gamble of resigning as an MP to fight a by-election in Clacton. But has his bluff been called in his big the people versus the establishment vote? Because none of the other main parties plan to stand against Farage, branding it a gimmick and fake. Reform UK has also accused the National Crime Agency of illegally leaking its MPs' bank statements to the media, which is why they say various stories have got into the media about their finances. So we're going to be discussing all of that, and obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Also going to be talking about the NATO summit, where Keir Starmer is at the moment, and the US overnight obviously launching strikes on Iran in response to attacks on 3 oil tankers. Oh, yeah, and the small matter of, should we have some scrutiny of the man who's going to be our Prime Minister on the 20th of July? Well, the Office of Budget Responsibility has warned that Andy Burnham, as the next PM, faces a whopping £120 billion shortfall to stop our debt from spiralling out of control, thus getting into serious financial crisis. That's either £120 billion in tax rises or deep spending cuts, or both. Yeah, talking about building more council houses and moving number 10 to the north for a Wednesday and a Thursday isn't quite going to cut it to solve the nation's problems, is it, Mr Burnham? Anyway, we'll talk about all of that. The question for you today, obviously it's got to be about Nigel Farage dramatically resigning to call a people versus the establishment by-election in Clacton. None of the main parties are going to stand against him. Not the Tories, not Labour, not the Lib Dems, not the Greens, not even his nemesis, Rupert Lowe of Restore. The only party I think that is agreeing to stand so far is Lawrence Fox's Reclaim Party. And, of course, Count Binface. I don't know, I'm assuming the Monster Raver Looney Party as well. But I want to know, has this basically backfired? Have they called his bluff? Or do you support what Nigel Farage is doing? Is he running scared from a parliamentary investigation and reasonable scrutiny of his finances as a public figure and a man who could be our PM in a few years' time? Or is he actually the victim of a establishment stitch-up? I want to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. That's the number to get in touch. You can also text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can also get in touch on X at talkTV, as a lot of you already are. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Delighted to say, joining me in the studio today, looking gloriously summery, Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Looking very dashing and summery.
Thank you very much.
We do have a go at him a lot, whether it's a moustache, whether it's some very, very, very strange items he bought in Marrakesh. But today, you know, I mean, again, the irony of me ever discussing anyone's clothes. I mean, give me a break. Anyway, I'm in two minds on this Nigel Farage thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are. We're going to be playing some clips of what he had to say yesterday. 20 minutes announcement, running a bit late. We said it would be at 2 o'clock, but it happened at live in Ian Collins' show. I did love, by the way, the media going, oh, you know, and it was, the cameras were provided by Reform. There were no journalists present. Well, there were journalists present when Andy Burnham did his big speech the other week. They weren't allowed to ask a question. I'm not sure it makes a difference whether a journalist is in the room or watching on Zoom if they ain't allowed to ask questions. It looked like he was coming out fighting. There was a lot of, you know, very angry about Sky going to the house he owns where they did know that his daughter lived there. It had been in the Times a couple of days earlier. They also knew he was out of the country because they were then at the airport the next day to meet him at the airport, which he'd put photos of him with J.D. Vance. There were clues. In fact, a lot of people in the media go, oh, he's always out of the country. That being in the news. He reckons that he is the victim of an establishment stitch-up. They haven't been able to get him politically, electorally. They're still riding high in the polls. And therefore, they're coming for him through other methods. So he basically wants to sort of pull the rug and pull this by-election. The trouble is, the questions being asked about his finances, in my view, are totally legitimate, totally reasonable. As a voter, as someone who has no axe to grind, quite the opposite with Nigel Farage, I still think he has questions to answer on this. He is facing a double parliamentary investigation on this, and he could, in theory, if they find against him, and if he gets 10-day suspension, face another by-election. Is he just playing games, or has he called, so we could say, the establishment's bluff?
Yeah. You say you're in two minds. I'm also in several minds about this, because there are many layers to this. You're right to say that actually scrutiny of somebody's financial affairs, if you're in politics, especially if you're a party leader, is fine. And actually the whole time I've been sort of sat here going, how on earth could he have been so blind that this would have come up at some point? That said, yeah, I do find it really, really very curious that this is coming out at the exact moment that the Labour Party is anointing a new leader, almost without any scrutiny, as you said. Which it's not as if we fell into that trap 2 years ago and just didn't scrutinise a guy. But the level of sort of interest from members of the press in trying to scrutinise Andy Burnham is minimal. And this stuff, actually, it's not as if it was unknown. His relationship with George Cottrell was not unknown. Anybody in politics has known all of this. A lot of that in the Sunday Times,
that sort of reignited everything, was actually well known.
It's all of it. Actually, all of it is very well known. His relationship with people in cryptocurrency has actually been very well known for a very long time. So I do find it very curious that they've picked this exact moment that we are anointing. They? The Sunday Times, and that, by extension, now Sky News as well. I think it's perfectly legitimate, as you say, to ask these questions. But he's been in Parliament now for how long? Why have they picked the exact moment that the Labour Party is going,
the accusation coming from Richard Tice and others is that...
exactly my point. He's saying that the NCA, the National Crime Agency, may have passed information to journalists, which he's, I don't know what evidence he has of that.
And what are the allegations about Richard Tice's bank situation involving money from George Cottrell, but also the money that was given to Nigel Farage, that may have been laundered money. I believe the NCA didn't actually make any finding on that.
Yeah, but again, that's partly because everybody says...
crypto funds get flagged every day.
But that's exactly the problem, is because governments can't get a grip on cryptocurrency because it's there so that governments don't have control over your currency. Immediately, governments, and therefore, some journalists then go, oh, well, it's all dirty, like the US dollar is clean. But honestly, it's one of those things where, equally, something else that's just stuck in my mind this whole time, for months now, Dominic Cummings, former guy, number two, former Prime Minister's right-hand man, has been saying this would happen. He's been saying they won't be able to get Farage on lots of things, so they will go after his money. So for a start, he's known full well that there are questions about Farage's finances, but he's also known about the tactics, and now we are seeing this happening. And this is why I'm sort of sat here going, yes, you can't sit there and go, oh, the journalists are very bad for doing this. But at the same time, as I say, the timing and the methods, they do stink a little bit. And so I can understand why Farage has ignited like this, but I think strategically this was an error, is what I would say.
And we'll come to that. Can two things be true at the same time? One, there is a legitimate case to answer regarding who's giving him money and why, and him failing to declare it. I think he could have dealt with all of this by simply declaring all of these things. And two, the establishment will attempt to stitch him up. These things come... Same with the Donald Trump stuff. I think all of the cases against Donald Trump brought by, Democrat-led... I mean, people blatantly openly, State Attorney General were literally people stood on elections. I think a very different system there. It's rather more open and honest. Basically saying, I'm going to take Trump down. And highly political. But nevertheless, I think they were banged to rights in those cases. But again, at the same time, now let's listen to three crucial clips from yesterday. What Nigel Farage had to say. First of all, is when he's talking about why the establishment is out to get him.
It seems to me that the establishment have now decided that they can't beat us fairly, so they've chosen to use foul means. Let me be absolutely clear. After the furore and the media pile-on, well, not just the media, the other political parties too. Let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law in any way at all. I have not misused public money. And for the first 2 years of being an MP, my personal MP expenses are zero. Not, of course, that you'll read about that in mainstream media. And yes, of course, Parliament has its rules about how members ought to behave. And I believe I've absolutely obeyed those rules and done so under getting good legal advice. The standard rules are clear. This is what they say. The code applies to members in all aspects of their public life. It does not seek to regulate what members do in their purely personal lives.
Now, again, it doesn't, but if there's any cause for any reason, for any reasonable person could think there was a question, question and answer, you are supposed to register. I think Nigel Farage is wrong on this, I really, really do. He then goes on and he's been talking about how, he didn't have any money, well, he had a big career, left that highly lucrative career to run in politics and wanted to make some money. And again, I think we're all very, very happy for him to make some money. But again, these are gifts. Some of this is gifts. I've got no issue with how much GB News pays him or how much a gold company pays him, but these are all gifts. And you talked about this particular gift, the £5 million gift from the Christopher Harper, to say it was given to me on an unconditional basis and I can do with that money exactly as I wish. But he said there is a big reason I'm going to need that money, and it's simply this. Here's what he said.
For over 20 years now, I have been subject to constant demonisation by the press. For daring to be outside the consensual view on many issues, I've been attacked again and again. And I am the most physically and verbally attacked public figure or politician of modern times. Yes, you will know of some of the incidents: milkshakes thrown in my face, placards bashed over my head. But let me promise you, you only know about a fraction of the number of times that I've been assaulted. Worse still, she now has broadcasters haranguing her. Sky News were one of them, and when I questioned them on it, they willfully and deliberately lied and said on their channel that they hadn't contacted the family. Well, let me be clear. I will not tolerate intimidation of my family. I will not tolerate the location of where they live being revealed. I will not tolerate any of my family being endangered because of what I choose to do in public life. So yes, you can ask, am I angry? But I've never been angrier in my life.
Well, the start of that clip, he's talking about the various taxes, how we know about the milkshakes, because there was that attack in the pub, car written off, again, with his family, with his children, and there was also basically an arson attack, similar to that on the Prime Minister's house. And again, lots of these cases just keeping it quiet, trying to keep it out of the public media because it encourages more, just non-stop death threats against him. And then he was talking about his daughter, and this is this big battle he's in with both the Times and the Sun and the Sky News about the Times published a picture of his so-called property empire. Again, I think for a man of his means, and I think unusual, he would own a number of properties. His wife owns one of them anyway. The argument is, were they declared, should they have been declared, etc., etc. They identified a house that he used to live in with his ex-wife, but that his daughter now lives there. That was in the article. And Sky News went to the house along with other media, and they knocked on the door. They said they didn't actually make contact with his daughter, but they wanted to sort of see, who lived there. But it was already in the paper that his daughter lived there. It was also known, I believe, at the time that he was abroad at the time. Nigel Farage was abroad, so they couldn't perhaps have expected to see him. But, I mean, he's now talking about even boycotting Sky News as a result of that. But at the end of all of this, at the end of everything, this is what Nigel Farage concluded.
I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which would happen, I hope, in short order. No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election. It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go. And that is why I will be putting my name forward to stand in this by-election. I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that reform has started. And I would say this to you, the voters of Clacton: if I win, you win. Because if I lose, they win. And we will never, with the two old parties, get the type of fundamental change that we need to fix broken Britain.
Now, look, that is punchy stuff. And I was tweeting off, oh, he's coming out fighting, he's angry. And as I was saying on the show yesterday, someone messed with my kid and saying, he's very protective of his children. I'm with him all the way. I can see his anger. There's differing versions of events of that, so, you know, we'll get to the bottom of that. But he says, you know, if I win, realistically, this is a safe Farage seat. The only candidates who are standing against him is Count Binface and Lawrence Fox from the Reclaim Party. You know, realistically, he would win this. Do you think that the other parties are winning this by saying, look, this is going to cost a lot of money, £100,000. You know, this is just a joke. This is a man avoiding scrutiny. If he thought he was going to win the parliamentary standards case, then he wouldn't be doing this. If he, you know, this is him just trying to distract it from everything.
He's going to end up looking like a bit of a fool because he is going to be stood on a dais next to a bin, and the bin's natural enemy a fox. So that's what's going to be going on there, and everybody's going to go, ha, look at Nigel. He's done all this for nothing.
Because David Davis did this years back when he was Shadow Home Secretary.
Yeah,
didn't he?
and I don't think it's particularly dignified. But I would also say, if, as our politicians are consistently telling us how sacred democracy is and that it's in danger and this, that and the other, you cannot decide that because you think Nigel Farage is calling a by-election in bad faith, you cannot just say, do you know what, democracy doesn't matter because it's not convenient to me. All the major parties refusing to stand are refusing to give the people of Clacton, A, an alternative choice. They're refusing, B, to put their, you know, case to the electorate, who knows, maybe the electorate have changed their mind, and C, they are refusing, ultimately, to scrutinise Farage themselves, because they're all turning around and saying, oh, well, we're going to stand in the next by-election because there's going to be one, at which point the people of Clacton can turn around and go, what is it you currently know, and what, therefore, are you not prepared to stand on now because it's not convenient? So, on the one hand, Farage is going to look like an idiot. However, I think the people of Clacton, if there is a subsequent by-election, will turn around to all of them and go, you were playing politics just as much as he was. You weren't prepared to give us a choice.
All your houses.
Yeah, and I just don't think... What I would say here in particular, you know, Andy Burnham has just got in off the back of a by-election. The gall on him to say, oh, this by-election's a gimmick. And on the other hand, you've got Kemi Badenoch saying, we're in the ascendancy, we're on the up, look at the polls. However, we are not going to stand in any seat where Reform do well. Yes, because that seems to be their strategy right now.
And this used to be a Tory seat.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? The cheek of the Labour Party, where they literally just... Andy Burnham going, will anyone stand down for me? Will anyone stand down for me? Finally gets, you know, his mate Josh to stand down for him. Well, on the promise of a big job in number 10 when he leaves as an MP. And by the way, Josh Simon should have stood down as an MP, not just as a minister, after outrageous behaviour, smearing journalists for doing their job. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going to stand up for, you know,
journalists
people doing their job. And again, I think the journalists who are talking about Nigel Farage getting 5 million quid from a crypto billionaire in Thailand. I'm sorry, I think those are journalists doing their job. As I said to Nigel Farage when he was on the show recently. But I'm just very straight on this. But I'm zero tolerance of any money dealings when it comes to politics. I want money, big money out of politics, full stop. But who elected representatives are getting money from is absolutely my business as a voter, whether you're my MP or not. You get to have a say on what happens in my country. I've got a right to know your finances. If you don't want me to know your finances at all, then you don't stand for public office. Them's the rules. And he knew the rules. I think he's in breach of the rules. I think he was going to get more than a slap on the hand. I think he's running scared of that. I think he's playing a game. And yesterday afternoon, for an hour or two, it looked like a very clever game. I'm going to run ahead. Now, but if the other parties don't stand, you say he could look a bit of a chump on election night. Also, there could be, as you say, a second by-election. He comes back into Parliament. The parliamentary investigation then resumes. They then decide that he has committed wrongdoing, if they do, and then he possibly gets suspended. If it's more than 10 days or 10 days or more, there could be a recall petition. Again, maybe there wouldn't be a recall petition, as you say, because people of Clacton are going, we're done now. That may be a clever tactic, and he's avoiding all of that. However, the other option is, apparently the whole system is, you know, if someone says, I'm resigning my seat, that goes to the Chancellor of all people to decide, and then the outgoing MP is appointed to one of these silly roles, some official title, and then then the by-election is called. The Chancellor can refuse to call the by-election and say, no, you must remain until the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner has completed his investigations. Now, these things take far too long, and they really should be completed much more quickly. And they should interview the person they're dealing with, or they're investigating, very, very quickly. You know, I mean, it's madness that they don't. He hasn't even been spoken to by the Commissioner yet. So there are very many different options here, and I'm not entirely sure that any of them are actually going to turn out that well. We were hoping to speak to Richard Tice. He was booked onto the show, but apparently everyone's at a meeting. Everyone is miraculously in a meeting now in Reform. I mean, literally, the entire party, until, frankly, I kicked off. Imagine me doing that. I know, we're all surprised. And Sarah Pochin, one of the Reform MPs, has valiantly agreed, and we're very grateful to her to join us on the show in about an hour's time. But I have to say, if you're going to do something like this and then not provide a journalist, I know that Zia Youssef was on breakfast doing the general media round, but, we would expect to have a Reform voice. You can't boycott everybody, guys, would be my response. Nigel's going to win this by-election. Yeah, okay, I say the big.
Do you remember Voting McBoatface? Do you remember when the British public decided we are going to go after the joke like there's no tomorrow?
Yeah. I do love the British people.
Do you know what
Count
actually
Boatface could be the winner.
Do you know what would be the absolute banter outcome? Is Farage wins against Boatface 52-48. That would be the actual best outcome for all concerned.
Do you think that this is playing games with democracy from everybody?
Yeah, it is. And actually, this is why, you know that I'm a bit cynical. This is why when people talk about the sacredness of democracy in this country, I laugh.
Well, no one in Labour can do that because they tried to undermine the biggest democratic vote for anything.
They do not believe that democracy is sacred and important. It is convenient when it is convenient, and when it isn't, they don't care. Yeah, so Farage is using this because he thought it would be a clever tactic. I think he's misjudged it slightly. But again, I would say everybody else sitting there going, well, we're not going to play because we don't like the rules that you've set. That looks pretty bad as well.
If any of the other parties genuinely thought they could win this by-election, they would absolutely be standing. Their tactics would be completely different. I think we need to be very clear on that. I want to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Again, I think two things can be true at the same time. He is being stitched up by the establishment. I find the way that MPs barrack him when he stands up to ask a question, it's disrespectful to the voters he represents.
Yes.
They don't even wait for him to speak. There's all honourable member this nonsense.
Yeah.
It should absolutely be stopped, and the Speaker needs to get on top of that. That's got to be stopped. Barrack people for what they say. That's no problem at all. You can disagree with him, but it's basic sort of bullying at school. It really is. Nigel Farage will know a lot about that by all accounts on school days. But it can be an establishment stitch-up, and he has also made a very bad mistake in not declaring any of this money. And he can believe, well, it's personal use. I'm sorry, I don't think that's what most people think, but by all accounts, the polls suggest by 2-1, people are not impressed with this. Anyway, let's talk about something. I've got a whole list of things.
Is there other stuff going on today?
There is other stuff going on.
Apparently the ceasefire has broken down in the Middle East.
We've got no money. Most Britons believe the social contract's broken. You name it.
Well, that's just a weekday.
There's a NATO summit. Keir Starmer's abroad.
Again, this is just a weekday.
Yeah, never hear Keir. But isn't the world a better place with that? So we've got deputy PMQs. Lucky us, again, at midday. But I do want to talk about that. There were two interesting court cases yesterday. One, of course, was Marine Le Pen. Basically, her being found that, yes, she definitely is guilty of embezzlement of EU funds, like the rest of the parties aren't doing it. And again, establishment stitch-up, they went for her more than any other. I'm sorry, that is no doubt at all in my mind. But even being tagged, and when we got the news just before 1 o'clock yesterday, it very much appeared, and I think all the media of the view that, right, she's got a prison sentence that's suspended, but 45 months it was going to be, which was when she couldn't stand for public office. But 30 of that was suspended, and the rest of it was already served, so she can run for the French presidency. I think she shocked the whole of France by announcing she would go ahead with that. But the other big court case was a massive, massive defeat in the High Court for Prince Harry, Elton John, Sadie Frost, Liz Hurley. What a surprise. The man in the corner remembers Liz Hurley's involved. Shocker. And Baroness Doreen Lawrence as well, and the former MP Simon Hughes. But extraordinary, this case, it's the latest sort of phone hacking, information blagging case. Huge allegations of illegal behaviour against the Mail and the Mail on Sunday. They've staunchly defended it, no settlement. And the judge basically set a very high bar, much higher bar than the other cases. It's not balance of probabilities, it's can you prove there was any actual illegal activity? And no, they couldn't. This decision was absolutely crushing. It was an absolute hands down. You've not produced any evidence. Not a single one of these cases was found. Any of the, I think, 50-odd newspaper articles were found to have been, problematic. There's going to be another couple of days of court hearings to decide on the costs and the like. Now, but we're looking at, this is extraordinary, 50 million quid in costs on all sides. and likely, obviously, the defendants have to pay for it. They apparently are insured, but this could just sort of end all of these cases at this point.
Yeah, just a line on the Marine Le Pen thing. It's very funny to see this kind of stitch-up thing going, this sort of thing. You've got FIFA, you know, being very, very corrupt at the moment, and even they're looking at this going, wow, we aren't that blatant.
Exactly.
But, you know, when it comes to this particular case, I do think it was right that the bar was raised in terms of the amount of evidence, because you can't actually make these kind of claims and then go, probably happened. Why not? Let's award a huge amount of damages and punish the free press.
They simply don't accept that actually an awful lot of your friends and family are selling stories about you.
Yeah, people
they just
gossip.
are.
Well, I mean, what was the Colleen Rooney story and the Rebecca Vardy? Actually, lots of people are at it because it helps them remain relevant. They keep relationships with journalists and they make a bit of money on the side. Like everybody in those sort of circles.
And the journalists are nice to them.
But equally, this is a large part of what fame is built on. Spreading stories about each other. Now, when it comes to Prince Harry, when he was Royal Prince, I have some sympathy because he didn't have a say until he left. But for the rest of them, you're kind of like, come on, you're celebrities.
You literally sold your lives to the press.
Yeah, where do you draw the line?
Your love life. I mean, and again, you're only celebrities because you were on, you know, in the Sun and in the Mail and everywhere. But this is the thing. I mean, you know, if there'd been criminal behaviour, I'd be the first to stamp, you know, criticise it. I've got no time for it at all. And I think great journalism doesn't require criminal behaviour and should never be using it. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was really interesting. Paul Dacre, who's now the sort of executive editor of the Mail, was the direct editor of the Mail, and I did a few weeks working at the Mail. I mean, it's a hard place to work. That man
I can see the PTSD on your face.
I mean, seriously. And they said, "Oh, would you stay?" I went, "God, no." I mean, seriously, at that time, under Paul Dacre, I mean, the man. When you say hands-on, I mean he read every word of that paper. He knew exactly what was going on everywhere. But he said, you know, the paper's been completely exonerated. He says he feels sorry for Harry because, you know, and he says the thing is, you know, a lot of this is about Harry and William both feel their mother Diana was hounded to death by the media. Again, it was the paparazzi, and largely foreign paparazzi, by the way, not the British press. The British press were much more contained in what they could do, and did do for that very reason. And actually, a lot of the stories about Diana were put there by herself. She was, you know, really close friends with, you know, Richard Kay, the royal correspondent, royal editor of the Mail, and, you know, giving stuff to, you know, Morton and stuff. I mean, so an awful lot of the stories that they feel a horrible intrusion were actually placed there by Diana.
The whole thing about Prince Harry, I know people don't like him. I don't particularly like him, but I do also I share Paul Dacre's thing. He's Tim Nice but dim. Like whoever it is that advises Prince Harry, somebody needs to have a word with those people.
No, they get sacked every 3 months because anyone who says something he doesn't like, then
fair enough.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on Prince Harry, so give us a call on that 0344 499 1000 if you want to talk about, you know, things like a NATO summit. You're welcome to as well. But lots of your calls coming in about Nigel Farage. As always, I'm late for the break. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Coming up in a moment, Brendan O'Neill also going to be talking to Jamie Jenkins about the Office for Budget Responsibility warning. And we've got rather a lot of money that we are missing out on, 120 billion that needs to be raised in tax cuts or in spending, tax rises, or spending cuts. Wonder which Andy Burnham will choose, if any. First up, then, let's get to your calls about Nigel Farage. Sean is in at Bridlington. Hello, Sean. What do you want to say about it?
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
I'm a little bit ashamed, a little bit upset about this, but I thought it was important to call up and tell you this. Yeah. I got an email yesterday morning from Reform. I'm a Reform member. I was a candidate at the last local elections for my area, and I've applied to be an MP, stand for parliamentary candidate.
Yeah, good for you.
I got an email saying, hang on a minute. You might not say that in a minute. I got the email yesterday saying I passed the vetting and I was onto the second stage, which is PAC, Parliamentary Assessment Centre, and we're given a list of ones to go to, next select. And then I heard the news about Nigel's press conference yesterday, his announcement yesterday, and I thought, I'm going to wait about this. And then as the day went on, and then when I heard Isabel Oakeshott come on your show, one of your shows, and say about the NSA attacking Richard Tyson.
National Crime Agency, yeah.
It is, yeah, and all that sort of stuff. It triggered what I'd already been thinking in the back of my mind. It's nothing illegal, anything like that, but I'm 58 years old. Yep. I've done a lot of things in my life, a lot of jobs. I've had lots of friends and fallen out with friends. And you know what? I'm not prepared to ruin my life.
And have every little curt exchange with an ex-colleague come back to haunt you. And this is a problem, and I think this does put off good people because the tidbits. But I don't know how much voters care about this stuff. It's like, the Reform candidate in his tweets in the Makerfield by-election, and his tweets about Carol Vorderman's bomb. I mean, I couldn't care less.
And I appreciate that, and I absolutely get it. And I would think the vast majority of people who would even consider voting Reform would feel exactly the same. But it's our life. There's just me and my wife. We lost our dog after 13 and a half years. We've not been on holiday for 15 years. So we're looking forward to having a few years before one of us might get ill or something like that.
You'd rather have an easy life.
life.
That is interesting, and it's going to put off a good person from entering politics. That's a bad thing.
I also thought that, we're losing the dog after he was our life for 13 and a half years. Yeah. I thought that would free me up with the time to get serious about politics. But when I've looked at like you mentioned earlier, about the abuse Nigel gets in the Commons when he stands up to speak, every little thing, I sued a former employee years ago for a very, very justifiable constructive dismissal. But the reasons behind the constructive dismissal, which is why the employer paid me off out of court, I'm sure would come to pass, and that would be embarrassing for me and other people concerned.
And then and then one side goes in. Sean, I'm very sorry to hear that, and I do think that is something we need to consider. Sean, appreciate that, and I'm sorry about the loss of a dog. I get. I'm a former dog owner. I get those losses. Appreciate your call. Thomas is in Colwyn Bay. Hi, Thomas. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
I just want to preface this by saying my right-wing loyalty card is fully stamped. I'm not like a lib who's just after Nigel because I don't like what he has to say. But this is season 8 of the Farage show, and he's just made it all about himself. And I know that he might feel like the media's just coming after him, but this stuff's important. And I bet he felt very clever when they came up with this idea, but it just looks slippery. Me and my girlfriend, when we watched a thing about this in the Telegraph yesterday, we were just like, come on, really? This is a waste of the people's money, and it's a waste of people's time. Like, I think the other parties have made him look very silly, and like he's got egg on his face now that they've called this by-election and they've just said, get on with it.
Yeah, off you go, we're not playing. Yeah, I think that is a worry, and I'm surprised he didn't think that through on the basis of when David Davis did this to his Shadow Home Secretary as Tory MP, this is exactly what happened. Thomas, appreciate that very, very much. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to be talking to Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill about this. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's talk to Brendan O'Neill. He's chief political writer at Spiked Online. Good morning to you.
Hi, Julia.
Very well. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, I was listening to you on Kevin's show yesterday, and you were very much like saying, whoa, this is, gung-ho Nigel Farage. He's really stuck it to him, he's doing well. Have you changed your tune at all, given that we've seen the other political parties go, we're not going to play the game. We're just simply not going to turn up. This by-election is a farce. It's a gimmick. We're not going to stand. He's going to end up standing against Count Binface, Monster Rave-Looning Party, and reclaims Lawrence Fox, who obviously would be happy to get all of them on the show. But I mean, is this now basically a gimmick that has gone horribly wrong?
No, I'm even more firmly in Nigel Farage's corner than I was yesterday, in fact, because I think the other parties have behaved disgracefully. I really do. I think this is actually quite sinister, their refusal to stand in this by-election. By-elections are called for all sorts of reasons. People die, people resign, MPs just get bored. There are always by-elections for various reasons. It is the duty of a party in a democracy to stand in an election. And for these parties to flounce out and say, well, we're not going to demean ourselves with this by-election. We're not going to engage with the people of Clacton. We're not going to try to appeal to the people in that seaside town who might support us. I think it's really outrageous. And this is what people mean when they talk about the uniparty, because this is unprecedented. This is actually far worse than what happened to David Davis, because in his by-election in 2008, only one party pulled out on the basis that it was a stunt. That was the Labour Party. The Lib Dems pulled out in an act of solidarity with David Davis. So they actually took the by-election incredibly seriously. What we're seeing now, all the parties pulling out in unison, is unprecedented and anti-democratic.
That's a very interesting take. I mean, we were saying a bit earlier, it's a little bit cheeky for the Labour Party to say, so outrageous to call a by-election, totally unnecessary, all the cost. Sorry, do they remember Makerfield? Josh Simons just resigned to give his mate a chance of running for the leadership of the party. I mean, they had 403 MPs to choose from to replace Keir Starmer. Not one of them was good enough. And so they just had a massive big cost to the public and a lot of focus on Makerfield just to get Andy Burnham into the job. So, I mean, they haven't got a leg to stand on there. The thing is here, as I've been saying for the last 40 minutes or so, two things can be true at the same time. The establishment is absolutely running scared of Nigel Farage, terrified of a reform government or a reform Tory government getting in, but him having any role at all. They're horrified that he's an MP. For 7 times he stood for the Parliament in Westminster, they threw the kitchen sink at him to stop him from getting in because they were so scared of him. He has proved what a powerhouse he is. He's still at the top of the polls. So is it 250, 300 polls now in a row, putting reform first? There is absolutely going to be an attempt to undermine him. I wouldn't even be surprised if stuff has been leaked by the National Crime Agency, has been claimed by Reform of their personal accounts, and that people are out to get him. I don't doubt that at all. However, can it also be true at the same time that he is running scared of a parliamentary investigation into his finances and his failure to obey the rules which are there for us? They're not there for the MPs, they're there for us, the voters, to know who is funding our political representatives, and the registered members of interest is there for a reason, and he failed to declare stuff which, frankly, as I've told him to his face, he should have declared, and he's running scared of proper scrutiny.
You're absolutely right. There are two things going on. The first is that Reform still has a few, shall we say, unprofessional ways of organising. It seems to me, anyway. I don't know the ins and outs of these donations, and we all await the judgment of the commissioner, the standards commissioner. My view on Reform is that they have a real obligation to keep themselves squeaky clean.
Yes, it was a stupid error.
Even more so than the other parties. I mean, they all have to be squeaky clean these days because the media loves a scandal. They're always sniffing around for any kind of scandal, even if it's a large one or a small one. So all parties have to be squeaky clean, but especially Reform, because they know that the establishment is out to get them. So they should have dot all the I's, cross all the T's, be very, very careful indeed. I agree with that. But then the other side of it, which you mentioned there, I am increasingly actually quite scared of the anti-reform movement, because this is what it feels like when an establishment tries to shut down a political party. You know, people are saying that Nigel Farage is paranoid. He has good reason to feel paranoid, because the way in which all parties are now ganging up against him, not only in relation to this by-election in Clacton, but also we saw it in Makerfield. Yeah. We saw the middle-class electorate in Makerfield basically clubbing together to stop reform.
But they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to tactically vote. I'd vote tactically in elections all the time.
They are absolutely allowed to do that. But what I think we're seeing in the media, in the political establishment, and among sections of the electorate where I have less of a problem with it, people can cast their votes freely, but we are seeing the emergence of a massive uniparty called basically Stop Reform. Yeah. And I am worried that there is this effort to thwart populism in this country, to make sure that no populist ideas in relation to the crisis at the borders or net zero or any of the other policies that people are angry about, there is a movement to stop that. Now, some of it is legitimately enacted. People can vote however they please, but some of it I find more sinister. I think the media obsession with the reform has crossed the line into just insanity. I think the political parties behaviour in Clacton is obscene, and I think there is this attempt by all comers to stop reform, and that worries me.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with you on that, but I also think, you know, because they know that's happening, they need to be whiter than white, need to be more careful. There's no doubt at all, you know, with the civil service, we know that if you had meetings, union meetings about how we'd stop reform doing what they want to in government. I mean, again, everyone involved in that should be sacked on the spot just for having that meeting. I mean, it's simply a massive, massive lack of impartiality there. I think the fact that he does not have and has not had for many years the security that he absolutely needs is, again, also a political decision. I think it's absolutely outrageous. I'm sure you have as well, but as a friend of his, I've been very aware of the threats he faces. And if you meet up with him, they need to be, you can't just have someone that's only got one exit, and the security there beforehand. The stuff that he was talking about yesterday about, the firebomb attack on his house, we'd already seen. I mean, I'd seen on social media when he and his family were basically attacked in their car and attacked in a pub. This has happened again and again, numerous instances. The laughing by many on the left, your Owen Joneses, and even actually some Labour MPs, laughing and chuckling about him having milkshakes thrown in his face. Well, thank God it was milkshake and it wasn't acid. This was happening at a time when acid was being thrown in people's faces routinely in crimes. Their lax attitude to his safety, really quite terrifying. And in the wake of, and he mentioned it himself, Charlie Kirk, the right-wing influencer in America, being murdered, you can understand his absolute concern. The attempts on Donald Trump's life. Again, the fact that the authorities don't seem to take the attacks on him seriously at the same time as the outcry and debates in Parliament if someone says a naughty word to a female Labour MP and then they all lose their minds.
Absolutely right. There is this attempt to wear Farage down, to drive him out of politics, to just make him lose his mettle and his confidence, and to say, get out of politics, you're not wanted. That's really sinister, and I think that the milkshake throwers and the people who've hit him on the head with the placards and the people who've issued death threats against him, he very frequently gets death threats, I see them as the kind of militant wing of this establishment attempt to drive him away from politics, to thwart reform, to thwart the threat of populism. I think that's what's happening. And, people can like Farage or dislike Farage. That's their business. But it's just unfair and unjust, and I would say undemocratic, to try to use all these various methods to drive someone out of politics because you don't like what he says and you don't like the fact that he is reflecting a huge swath of public opinion. That's really what this is about. They want to get rid of Farage so that ordinary working class people, Brexiteers, people in the North, people in the Midlands, people in Wales, so that people like that won't have someone to vote for. That's what this is about.
Do you think this has echoes of what's happened to Trump? Although I thought all those cases were banged to rights, I'm afraid, against him. But 100%, they were also politically motivated. Democratic, attorneys general basically saying, I've got elected on an anti-Trump platform and now I'm going to go after Trump. I mean, they're rather more open and blatant about it in the States, aren't they? And Donald Trump has returned the favour both times he's been in office. So, I don't think he's got much to complain about. But that attempt to go after him, through the courts to stop him from being a credible candidate, although he could, even if he'd been behind bars, could have still run for the presidency and probably would have won it. But that basically backfired horrifically for the Democrats in terms of the support for Donald Trump. Hence, we have President Trump again. But also what's been happening to Marine Le Pen, where the courts decided to massively go for Le Pen and her Rally National, because they've been embezzling funds from the EU. Every single political party in the EU is paying their political staff pretending they're doing EU business. This is well known. EU corruption is off the scale. But no, there's only one party they go for.
You know, I'm really worried. Over the past 20 or 30 years, scandal has been used as a tool to basically bring down politicians. And actually, I was uncomfortable with that back during the Tory sleaze days. I thought some of that was exaggerated, and some of that was, you know, of course there was sleazy behavior. There always is in politics, but I thought the weaponization of that to try and take down certain politicians or ruin governments was wrong. And I similarly thought it during the Labour years. I actually thought that the Mandelson scandal was slightly blown out of proportion, although it did shine a light on the incompetence of government. But we have seen the weaponization of scandal to try and bring people down, and that feels undemocratic. It feels like you're going over the head of the people. That's the positive thing about what Farage has done. He has said it shouldn't be the media elites who judge me, it should be ordinary people. My biggest worry at the moment is the power of the media establishment. I think the mainstream media has a staggering amount of power to set the narrative, to determine what is discussed in politics on a day-by-day basis, even to determine the fate of politicians by kind of really ganging up on the ones they don't like. We need to clip the wings of the media elites. That's the power institution I'm most worried about right now.
Very, very interesting. Love to hear everyone else's thoughts on that. Big thanks to Brendan O'Neill at Spiked Online, their chief political writer. Going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk about the small matter. It's just 120 billion quid that's missing from our funds. There's going to have to be tax rises or big spending cuts. This is according to, the Office for Budget Responsibility. Otherwise, we could face a massive debt crisis. Going to talk to Jamie Jenkins, a former ONS statistician. Up next, this is Talk. The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's talk about, our country's finances doesn't get enough attention, including from the current Prime Minister Keir Starmer, never hear Keir, over the NATO summit in Turkey right now, or indeed the incoming one on the 20th of July. Yet to hear what any of Andy Burnham's plans are going to be regarding how he's going to deal with the public finances, which are, and it's not a matter of political opinion here, they are in a terrible mess. Well, let's talk about all this with Jamie Jenkins, former statistician with the Office for National Statistics. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia. We might have to have a whip round to stop paying some of this debt down.
Well, I think we are, aren't we? I mean, look, first of all, how big is our debt? And tell us, what has the Office for Budget Responsibility, the independent body hired by the government to sort of keep an eye on finances, what have they had to say today?
Yeah, so when we're looking at our debt, Julia, we normally look at it as a percentage of GDP. And for people, we always talk about GDP, but some people I speak to in the street don't even know what it is. So basically, GDP is the value of all the goods and services produced in the UK. So it gives you a sense of the size of the UK economy.
It's our economy, basically the size of our economy,
Yeah, pretty much the size of the economy. And then we look at how much is our current debt as a percentage of that GDP. And it's currently running around 95%, which is extremely high in kind of historical terms. You normally have only seen it this high generally when you've had kind of the First World War and the Second World War. Yeah. And remarkably, what we've seen over the last 2 decades, Julia, is experienced one of the largest increases across the developed world in relation to the G7. So this isn't just a problem of, say, the last couple of years.
It's not just lockdown related.
No, it's not just lockdown. And Rachel Reeves herself, Julia, she's borrowed £274 billion since the general election. Staggering amounts of money.
Quite a lot. But it's basically, this is us living beyond our means. We are just basically, we're living on payday loans. I mean, given the rate of interest we're paying on a lot of that debt, paying more than 110 billion every year just on the interest, not even paying off the debt. But basically, we're basically dealing with a payday lender who's going to come round with the tattoos going, it's time to pay up any moment now, right?
Yeah, so the debt's approaching £3 trillion, and if you just take May alone, so you've talked 110 billion. That's kind of our annual debt payment. So it's a bit like, you owe money. They come back to you and say, you owe us money, and you've got to pay us back some of the interest that you've got. You can't afford this. You keep borrowing money. We're in this spiral of borrowing more money.
We're borrowing to pay the debt, which is again payday lender stuff. So the Office of Budget Responsibility, they have said that our finances, our public finances, are on an unsustainable path because we keep doing this. And the figure they've given, and again, £120 billion, they basically say, is what is going to have to sort of come off the borrowing or come off the spending, or a combination of the two, for us to get even vaguely back on track and not end up, are we talking about 1970s territory, going cap in hand to the IMF asking for a bailout?
Well, it could be worse. So they're just talking about we might need to put taxes up or cut spending to keep the public sector debt as 95% of GDP. They've done some projections, obviously modelling, you get different numbers, but they've done projections, Julia, that shows in the next 50 years, it could get up to 300% of GDP, just looking at the current fiscal path.
But at that point, people, I mean, the bond markets, they don't want to buy our debt, surely, at that point, because they'll worry that we're not going to be able to pay it back.
Oh, clearly, and the UK's got that baked into its interest rate at the moment, in the fact that we've got such high levels of debt, we don't seem to have it under control. You're right to say Burnham hasn't come out to say what he's planning on doing, and what the government's doing, Julia, is it's taxing us more but continuing to spend more. We've had data out this morning on the 2-child cap benefit being lifted. That's another £2 billion going there. That's going to rise to £3 billion by 2030-31. And the remarkable
there's basically 500,000 households are now getting, and again, it's what, £3,500 extra a year for each child over 2 that they of the first 2 they have, because they're not working or not working hard enough, and that's why they need the money. I mean, that's why.
And that is the problem. We've been asked to fund more and more family decisions. I'm a believer that you should pay for your own children. We do give some.
Jamie, that will never catch on. You fascist.
I know, I'm fascist. But the remarkable thing in all of this, Julia, is this tax and spend. So because the government, there's 3 ways out of this. The first one is you can obviously tax more. But if you look at the OBR data, if you take tax as a percentage of GDP, that was around 37% just before the COVID period. It's forecast by the end of 2030-31 to go up to 43%. We're already maxing out the tax. You can cut spending. This government's got no plan to do that. And you can see the triple lock is probably an area that the government needs to look at, but nobody will touch it.
That's a huge part of the welfare. So it's what, 300 billion annual welfare bill, but a huge part of that is pensions. But even getting rid of the triple lock, I mean, you're not going to be saving much of that, are you?
Now, you've got to do a radical kind of solution from this. But the other one that you could do, Julia, which is the third part, is grow the economy, because it's all as a percentage of GDP.
Why did no one think of that?
Yeah, so if the economy can grow, and the way to grow the economy, which this government's clearly got no business acumen in there, is if you give money to people, they will spend it. So rather than keep putting taxes up and then just dishing it out in the unproductive part of the economy, we're seeing private sector continuing to decline, public sector continuing to grow. If you want to grow the tax base, you've got to grow the economy, and that's what the government needs to do.
So,
I think
so not taxing employers for hiring more staff, and not penalising people, and not perhaps thinking, as Andy Burnham apparently does, that moving number 10 on a Wednesday and a Thursday to Manchester and building more council houses with what labour I don't know and what materials I don't know is the answer to the economic woes of this country. And we've seen nothing from him yet. I mean, we don't even who his Chancellor's going to be. God forbid it's Ed Miliband, who's with the net zero agenda, is, I mean, absolutely stifling any chance of growth in this country. You can't do AI, you can't bring back manufacturing jobs, you can't do anything if you've got the most expensive energy in the industrialised world by a long way. I mean, there is no plan.
There's been no plan for the last 2 years. Morgan McSweeney's already admitted that, I think, in the last week. There's been no plan for the last 2 years. Burnham's got no plan, and you're right to call out on the show today, Julia. All those MPs in Parliament, and none of them are common enough to be the Prime Minister. That's the state that this government's in. And the OBR report, people should wake up, because literally everybody who've got children, you're basically passing on the debt to them.
This is it.
And it's not responsible.
Because people have this idea, they're like, oh, well, we won't put taxes up, we'll borrow more. You're just putting taxes up in future on yourself and mostly on young people, on your children. I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? JB Jenkins, thank you so much. A, you know your stuff, and B, you can explain it so us simpletons can understand it. We so appreciate that. Former statistician with the ONS. Even Benedict Spence understood that. I haven't got time to come back to you. Don't smite with that. I will get you. We'll talk about that in the next half hour. In the next half hour, of course, you want to get up to more of your calls. A lot of them coming in about Nigel Farage, of course, and what do you make of his decision to call this people versus the establishment by-election in Clacton? None of the main parties are going to stand against it. It's going to be him and Count Binface. Do you support Nigel Farage, or has his bluff been called? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. We're going to talk to Sarah Pochin of Reform in the next hour. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's just approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. If you do miss anything from the show, well, you shouldn't, first of all, but if you do, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, more on Nigel Farage's gamble of resigning to fight that by-election in Clacton. None of the other main parties plan to stand against him, branding it a gimmick and fake. Has his bluff been called? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. That's the number to get in touch. Message us on at talkTV on X, or you can text us on 87222. Calls are charged the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. And we are also going to be talking about Prince Harry losing that £50 million phone hacking case against the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday in a, well, no doubt at all, a humiliating legal defeat. Coming up, we are going to be talking to the Reform MP, Sarah Pochin. I'm delighted that she's going to be on the show. In a couple of moments, going to talk to Mail on Sunday commentator Dan Hodges. Still with me in the studio, I'm delighted to say, it's Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. Didn't get much chance to come back to you in the last half hour. But just again, to briefly, you and I, bizarrely, are unusually for us, in kind of two minds on whether Nigel Farage has done the right thing here. Do you think that he thought that when he called this by-election that the other parties would stand and then he could, or has his bluff been called and actually he didn't realise, this looks like a good idea. The trouble is, this is exactly what happened to David Davis when he did this way back when.
I think he thought at least one party would take the bait. And you'd have to be sat there thinking, right, Restore exists to take chunks out of Reform, so surely they would stand. The Greens, they're dipping a little bit in the polls. They're not quite, as shiny as they were. They need something to boost themselves. You'd think maybe they'd come have a go at Nigel Farage. Even if Labour stepped aside, in many ways that might encourage the Greens more so to do it. Ed Davey can't stop talking about Nigel Farage. You'd think he'd love the opportunity to take a pot shot. And we're always being told now, increasingly, the Tories, they're rising in the polls. They're on the comeback trail. Surely at some point they have to actually try in a by-election that Reform poll very well in, and yet nobody has. And the problem with all of that is, I would say, if Farage then turns around and says it's an establishment stitch-up, it does rather look as if they are all in cahoots. That's not great.
The Uni Party, well, we're going to put all this to Dan Hodges. First of all, I just want to play just a clip, the final words in that 20-minute press conference that Nigel Farage gave yesterday, when he basically decided, well, how he was going to handle it. He says the attacks on him, he says the harassment of his family, the threats, and indeed he says also just establishment basically trying to stitch him up, he says, by going for him through finances rather than at the election ballot. Here's what he had to say.
I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which should happen, I hope, in short order. No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election. It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go. And that is why I will be putting my name forward to stand in this by-election. I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that Reform has started. And I would say this to you, the voters of Clacton: if I win, you win. Because if I lose, they win. And we will never, with the two old parties, get the type of fundamental change that we need to fix broken Britain.
Oh, it was certainly punchy. He came out fighting, but has it worked? Well, let's talk about this with Dan Hodges, commentator on the Mail on Sunday. Very good morning to you, Dan.
Morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Reading you on social media yesterday, you very quickly were saying, is bluffs being called? Is he going to end up with egg on his face?
Well, he is, but the reason he is this by-election's just not going to happen. I would be amazed if by the end of today or tomorrow, at some point tomorrow, we don't have a further statement from Nigel Farage or his spokespeople saying, OK, I wanted to take on the establishment. The establishment have run away from me. I am not going to put the voters of Clapton through a meaningless context, because if he doesn't do that, I mean, it's already an absolute disaster for him. But what's already a disaster will just become a national catastrophe.
Nigel Farage he's a good tactician. He's a very good politician. He's a very good campaigner.
Not anymore, he isn't.
Well,
not anymore, he isn't.
Even his biggest detractors would have to admit the guy can campaign. Do you think it's possible that he genuinely did not think it was an option, that the other parties wouldn't stand against him, even though that's what happened when David Davis did this?
I mean, yes, that's obviously what happened. I mean, everything that we've seen has been done based on emotion, panic, and the reality is, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. The thing about Nigel Farage is he is a politician who, up until this point, has been able to defy political gravity. Things that would, derail other politicians have just bounced off him. But as I've said, for a variety of reasons, his force field is now down, and he and the people around him don't know how to deal with it. So we saw yesterday them saying, this by-election will be the people versus the establishment. It won't. It will be Nigel Farage versus a man with a bin on his head. And
Which I love about British politics, by the way.
I
remember Theresa May having to stand next to him when she was Prime Minister.
And if Nigel Farage attempts to go through with this, he will simply become a national laughingstock. It's one thing in politics to be hated, and he's kind of used to being hated by a particular section of the electorate. But it's something else to be not.
Okay, so you think he's going to back down? The other option, of course,
he's going to have to. There's absolutely.
Well, the Reclaim, Lawrence Fox Reclaim says he'll stand moderate over Looney Party. I'm sure.
But there won't be a by-election. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Nigel won't resign.
There is another option, which is, of course, that the government. It's up to the Chancellor officially through the parliamentary procedures that he has to resign.
Are you joking? The Labour Party are rubbing their hands.
Okay, but there is an option. There is an option where the Chancellor, as she still is, Rachel Reeves, could actually say, no, I'm not going to appoint you to one of these silly, let me finish.
I keep seeing this line.
But my audience may not know about this line, Dan, so stop interrupting. This Bainwick of whatever it is, there's some silly ancient titles that you get appointed to, and then a by-election is called, it could be held in August. I mean, for a start, by-elections in August. Sorry, mate, I'm on the beach, I'm busy, was what a lot of people in Clacton may well say anyway. But crucially, they could just say, look, you can't resign in the middle of an investigation by the Parliamentary Commissioner. We only had an election 2 years ago. It's a waste of public money. We may get a by-election. I mean, there could be no by-election for whichever reason, your reason or this other reason, or there could be 2 by-elections because he could have a by-election, get re-elected. Parliamentary standards investigation continues. If he has found any wrongdoing over these various donations from his mates, and then he gets a 10-day suspension, there could be a recall of Parliament. He could be recalled in a vote, and then he has to stand again.
Let's deal with all those.
Yeah.
This line that's being put about, and I understand it's kind of being put about by some of Nigel Farage's supporters to again try and say, the establishment are going to try and block him. Trust me, the Labour Party, the Tories, the Lib Dems, they are. I mean, literally, I've been speaking to Labour MPs and Tory MPs this morning. They're breaking out the champagne at this. They just cannot wait for this to happen. So that is not going to happen. Now, the thing that is that you do touch on, this is another reason why Nigel Farage is going to have to just do a reverse ferret on this, because he thought the whole scenario was he would fight the by-election against the establishment, he would win. Then he knows full well he's going to be found guilty by the Standards Committee.
Yeah, he wouldn't have done this if he thought he was going to be cleared.
That will trigger another by-election. This is why he's done it in the first place. If he thought he'd be cleared, then we wouldn't be having any of this. He knows he's bound to rights and he's going to be done by the Standards Commission. There's then going to be a second by-election. Now, his message originally was going to be, you've told them once, you've told them twice, tell them again. Yeah. What's he going to do now? He's going to turn around and say, you've told Count Binface once, tell Count Binface again. It's just, the whole thing's a farce.
I think farce is the word it has come down to. You mentioned earlier, you were saying about this as being sort of ruled by emotion, and there's no doubt at all. He is very angry and very upset, not at his treatment. He's used to that. Water off a duck's back, the threats, goodness knows what. But like most people, You come for people's kids. They feel very, very, very differently. I can tell you, even in my own personal life, when someone has come for my kid, I'm telling you, they thought better of it afterwards.
No. There isn't a senior politician in this country that hasn't on one day had a journalist knock on their door, or a door of a member of their family. I've experienced it myself.
Your mother, of course, was a Labour MP.
This is not what this is about. This is not because a producer on Sky last week knocked on the door of a house Nigel Farage owns that a family member was at.
When they knew he was abroad and they knew he didn't live there.
No.
They knew he was abroad. He was very public. He posted pictures of JD Vance. They knew he was abroad and they knew he didn't live there. It'd been in the Times the day earlier.
Look, it wasn't as was presented just Sky. It was part of the pool. Yeah. They were trying to contact Nigel Farage himself. We were told,
he's got a mobile phone.
Look, just hang on a second. We were told this harassment had occurred. You have literally, you in your career will
stood on doorsteps,
done a knock like that. The point is that is a perfectly legitimate journalistic practice.
Not if you know that's not where the politician lives. The children of politicians are off limits. You know that. I know that. Everyone knows that.
Look, they were trying to find out and do an interview with Nigel Farage.
They knew Nigel Farage was abroad. If you want to do an interview with Nigel Farage, you call him on his mobile.
That's why when they knocked and he wasn't there, they went away. That is not what this is about. This is about one thing. Nigel Farage wants to avoid scrutiny about his finances.
He does.
He wants to avoid legitimate scrutiny of the $5 million that he took. He wants to avoid scrutiny about his relationship with Posh George, and he wants to avoid scrutiny about the myriad other issues relating to Reform's finances that are coming down the track. That is what it's about. It is not about a single producer knocking on a single...
OK, let's talk about some of the allegations, because Richard Tice put this out. We were hoping to speak to him today. Sarah Pochin has stepped in because he's in a kind of Minister Reformer in a meeting right now.
I bet they are.
I bet they are. The National Crime Agency, he says, is they believe is the body who of course denied that they have been leaking bank statements. They're saying that information that's got into the public domain was only known to themselves and to the National Crime Agency. The donation, the £5 million that got handed by Christopher Holborn in cash to Nigel Farage at the beginning of 2024, that had been flagged as possibly was it laundered money. Now, I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I've had some money sort of changing hands between family members, and you get the amount of phone calls from the bank. The most, even you've got the same surname, and it's just money for a loan for a property. I mean, literally banks all over it. Always, well, what's this money for? Who's doing what? £5 million coming from overseas to someone's personal bank account. You're damn right that's going to get flagged. But if that information has got into the public domain because stuff is being leaked from the National Crime Agency, as has been alleged, that is very serious stuff. This ties into the whole establishment stitch-up line, which Nigel Farage is pushing.
It doesn't tie into the establishment stitch-up at all. It was good journalism by The Guardian. Guardian have clearly got good sources.
But if your sources are using criminally obtained information, there's also the rules about that, aren't there?
Well,
there's public interest offence, but...
If that's what's happened, there'll be a criminal...
Again, it's an if. We're not... we're not alleging that.
If you want to allege that the Guardian journalists have...
I'm not alleging that. I'm saying...
I'm not going there.
Yes.
This is the reality. Again, as I said, it's a deflection. This is what we're seeing with every aspect of this. Every single aspect. Reform are not prepared to come clean. Nigel Farage is not prepared to come clean. They're not prepared to address any of the substance of the allegations. They're just flailing around, pointing around, screaming about establishment stitch-ups. The thing you've just said, this is the reality. Ordinary people, ordinary politicians do not get £5 million suddenly
given a point I made to Nigel Farage.
By a crypto billionaire, fail to declare it, then get that donation flagged to the National Crime Agency, and then turn around. I was having this conversation about this with Isabel Oakeshott this morning. Isabel Oakeshott saying, it happens all the time. This is the problem Reform have got. It happens in their world. It happens in Nigel Farage's world,
but not in ours.
It doesn't happen in the world of the ordinary
I don't know anyone's world in that which happens.
Right, I don't know anyone.
If
you don't know anyone.
If that money had been given,
who acts like that.
If that money was, and he's variously said, a gift, a reward for his security, whichever, and he changed his tune. Again, that doesn't help him. If that money, a personal gift from somebody who just, I want to know you're safe, Nigel. I love you for what you did on Brexit. Look,
Yes,
I took him out for a big slap-up lunch to say thank you. That's what I'm saying.
That sounds plausible.
Okay,
this guy just happened to say, I love you, Nigel. I love you.
Let me finish.
£5 million.
Let me finish.
£5 million.
If I took him out for a slap-up lunch to say thank you for Brexit, well done, but...
You didn't give him £5 million, though,
no,
did you?
And when I interviewed Nigel Farage a couple of weeks ago, as I said to him, no one lives in a world where people get 5 million quid as a thank you or reward or a gift. That's not what happens in here. He's not your dad, I said. That's why. If he had declared that money and said, look, it was a personal gift. It happened before I became an MP or planned to return as an MP. Personal gift. He declared any help, staff, etc. with social media from George Cottrell. If all of this was declared on his first register of members' interest, would this be a story now?
Well, certainly. Let's take the two of them. The 5 million would still be a story. He's got 5 million from this Thai crypto billionaire. So obviously that's still going to be a story. We still don't know why he was given the money. As I said, oh, thank you, Nigel. Thank you for everything you did for Brexit. Come off it. I mean, the point is he was given the 5 million and then I think, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks later, suddenly announced he was running for Parliament. I mean,
it was much later than that. And I know for a fact he was not planning to come back in at that time.
Well, OK. But it's a bit of a strange coincidence in my view. But anyway, but the key thing, to answer your point, if he declared it, there would have been questions. But there would be no parliamentary procedure.
Yeah.
The issue is he didn't declare it, nor did he declare the gifts he was given by Posh George. So the question is why? Why didn't he declare it?
Yeah.
All he had to do was abide by the rules that everybody else abides by. There's all this, everyone's out to get Nigel. No. People are simply saying Nigel Farage has to abide by the rules that everyone else has to abide by. Now, Nigel Farage clearly thinks he doesn't have to abide by the rules. He's literally saying, oh my God, this is all a stitch-up. It's a conspiracy.
No, he's saying under the rules, his defence is, and I don't agree with him on this, that this was a personal gift, and so it's nothing to do with politics and nothing, and therefore irrelevant.
That's not what he's done. That's not what he's done. Nigel Farage, on that basis, could have gone through the process, gone through the parliamentary process, allowed the parliamentary due process to happen, allow the parliamentary process to have been completed, and then abided by the verdict. He has literally, and he admitted it yesterday, he's literally called this by-election, which he's now going to have to call off, to short-circuit that process and said, I'm not going to take any notice at all about what the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner says or what the parliamentary watchdogs say. I'm going to just throw this to the British people instead. And the reason, as I said, he's doing so is because he thinks, and it basically knows, he's banged to rights.
OK. Final question to you, though. Can it be both true, as I've been pointing out today, that he's absolutely should have declared this money? We've got reasonable, legitimate questions to ask about all of these donations and this help and the failure to declare. And at the same time, the establishment is also out to get him, whether it's by the Parliamentary Standards Commission, but no, we've got civil service unions openly saying they're organising to, if and when reform get into power, what they can do to prevent action. We've seen what happened with Donald Trump. Again, I think all those court cases were banged to rights, but they were certainly politically motivated as well. We've seen what's happened to Marine Le Pen in France. And again, if you're telling me that no other political party is embezzling their EU money, I mean, most EU money ends up embezzled, are you kidding me, for their political apparatchiks, what a load of nonsense. That actually we are seeing that this does happen. Can he have done something wrong in breach of the rules at the same time as they are out to get him?
OK, on those three things, I can't think of a government that hasn't been undermined in some way by the trade union movement. Or trade unions, and I say that as somebody who used to work for a trade union. Yes, obviously there are other political parties where this stuff goes on. But the whole point of Nigel Farage's pitch, I thought, was that he was going to be different. He was going to be the guy that was going to come in and drain the swamp. The reality is, there's not an establishment stitch-up. Nigel Farage is simply being given the same scrutiny that any other politician gets. Keir Starmer got this over a pair of glasses.
This is
right?
true.
Boris got this over a piece of cake.
Really, really good to talk to you. Dan Hodges, thank you very much indeed. Commentator at the Mail on Sunday there, Dan Hodges. Benedict Spence, just listening to that, I mean, first takeaway from it was he reckons that Nigel Farage not only will back down, he has to back down. He's going to have egg on his face.
Well, I do think, especially if the Chancellor decides, actually, no, we're going to sort of postpone this and you're not going to get to call the tune to it, it might be opportune to do so. I do think that, as we've said, I don't think that he's played this particularly well. I think that it is going to backfire. And even if it does go ahead, he's going to be stood on a dais alongside a couple of joke candidates. That's not going to be a good look, especially if it then has to come back. But at the same time, to turn around and go, oh, no, there's no attempt to stitch him up, there's nothing to see here at all. These are not allegations that have just emerged. These are things that have been known for a really long time, and it is simply too convenient that they are coming out at the exact moment that the governing party of this country has gone, we don't fancy this leader, we're going to parachute a new one in, and nobody is going to ask any questions. And
so we're all talking about Nigel, we're still trying to talk about Burnham. I'm
sorry.
Flabbergasted by how much this Burnham is getting an easy ride.
It's fair to say that this is the same scrutiny anybody else would have done. It's the timing that matters here.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you. 11:23 is the time. I'm going to take your calls and messages up next. We're going to be talking to Sarah Pochin, the Reform MP, to get her thoughts on what Dan Hodges had to say. Also going to talk about Harry's phone hacking case. There are so many other stories I want to get to. We've got Deputy Prime Minister's questions coming up at midday as well. It's all going on. This is Talk. The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. Well, I mean, we do want to get lots of other topics, but goodness me, the phone line's absolutely packed with you wanted to have your say on Nigel Farage. We'll get straight to those calls right now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Martin is in London. Hello, Martin.
Morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. What do you want to say? And in particular, do you think that Dan Hodges is right, that Nigel Farage will need to back down and call off his by-election?
No, I don't. Personally, I wouldn't have called the by-election. I would have used that slot he had at 2 o'clock yesterday to just unleash a tirade on most of the media. I'd have used it for that. But he's done what he's done. But I think what we're seeing now is, without a shadow of doubt, a witch hunt. There's no doubt in my mind now. We're now starting to see people in the media that, that are Labour and Tory mouthpieces now, even people that I used to respect. I shouldn't name people from other networks, but people like Nick Ferrari that I always admired, even he's joining in on the witch hunt now. It's just non-stop, every day. And when you start seeing stories in the press about the National Crime Agency allegedly leaking details about Nigel and Richard's bank details, along with the fact that Nigel got debanked, you start to think that there is actually an ulterior motive
Well, this is the thing, because it's interesting. Dan Hodges is saying, "Oh, there's no establishment that sits sharp." I mean, we look about like what's happened in France, what's happened in America. We look at the civil service unions planning stuff, the debanking, other allegations. I have to say, I find it very hard to believe that anyone can think that the establishment wouldn't be desperate to get rid of him.
Absolutely. You saw what happened in America with Donald Trump. Now, some of that with Donald Trump was his own fault. But we saw, for all of us to see what they did in America to him, where they used everything that they possibly could to destroy him.
As he also did in his first term to his enemies and is doing right now.
I agree. And politics is very polarised, much more over there than it is here. But it is very clear what's happening, even with this by-election, that the other parties are not going to field candidates. The reason they're not going to field candidates is because they can't beat Nigel Farage in Clacton. That's what
if they seriously thought they could win against him, they would be throwing everything. Bearing in mind, he stood for election 8 times and 7 times every other party through everything. And they did tactical voting. They did everything they could to make sure he never got in. OK, so here's the thing. I believe that there is an attempt at establishment discharge, but I also think he was wrong. I'm not happy with accepting this £5 million. I'm not happy about that. I don't mind the George Cottrell stuff. That money, that's fine. But people have got, spent convictions. That's, that's between them, and that's a friendship. I get that. He's a long-standing Brexiteer. But you've got to declare stuff. Those are the rules. As a voter, I've got a right to know who's giving money to people who make laws that affect me. I've got a right. It's not, as Nigel Farage said to me in an interview, he goes, it's none of your business. It bloody well is.
I agree with you. He made a mistake there. The fact that he kept changing his story has probably made this story worse. But can I just also mention, isn't it interesting that for the last couple of months, we've non-stop on Talk, we've been hearing people telling us how wonderful Rupert Lowe is, how, he's got so much, he's got a great vision, he's principled, and yet the first hurdle, they've fallen at the first hurdle in the fact that they've decided to join the establishment and the uni party and not field a candidate.
I would have thought that Rupert Lowe would stand someone in that seat. I have to say, Martin, thank you very much indeed. Again, I don't think any of this is principled. I've had Rupert Lowe on my show many times. This is all that battle is just two middle-aged men having egos. That's all it is, I'm afraid. Peter is in Liverpool. Peter, what do you want to say?
Thanks for taking the call.
Oh, thanks for calling.
Nigel Farage by-election, I've heard a lot of people calling it a stunt. We just lived through the biggest by-election stunt in history in Maxfield.
Yep.
Are the guy that stood down, are there any rewards for that, do you think?
Oh, yes, he's going to get a job in the Burnham government. Yep.
Oh, will he?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
it's been made very clear. He's on the team. Yep.
See, to the ordinary person in the street, that sounds to me a bit bent, really.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound right, really.
Yeah.
Same as the House of Lords. Every year, people get nominated into the House of Lords. They're not there on merit. Yeah. They're there because they've done somebody a favour, maybe.
Yeah. Oh no, people are literally offered peerages in return for sort of standing down and letting someone, run in their seat. There's no doubt at all about it. Benedict and I are just waiting for our offers, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely.
I've heard people saying about Kemi Badenoch.
Yeah.
How they've turned off Nigel Farage and they're going to vote for Kemi Badenoch. Did they not realise that Kemi Badenoch's siding now with the worst Prime Minister in history, Keir Starmer?
Oh, that's interesting.
And alongside someone like that. Now, to me, she was in government for 14 years. She went along with everything. And it just shows to me exactly what the Tories are. Still the same old Tory party.
Very interesting.
And the Reform Party should never go near them.
Right, very, very interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Peter. That take. Quick response from Benedict Spence.
Yeah, at that point, Kemi Badenoch doing very well in the polls, and lots of Tories seem to think that means that there's a renaissance. I think that she is doing really well. Yeah. Actually, I think she's proven a lot of people wrong. If the Tories actually believe that people have forgiven them for the last 14 years, they're out of their minds. But lots of former Tory MPs, former being the key word there, are always up in my responses on social media telling me that I'm wrong and that they are on the up. I'm sure they're right.
We shall see. Right, coming up, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be hearing from Reform UK MP Sarah Pochin. Stay tuned for that. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:33 is the time. We've got Deputy PMQs turning up at midday. David Lammy taking questions on behalf of Never Hear Keir. Oh, he loves being on a red carpet in a foreign country, doesn't he, our current outgoing Prime Minister? Right now, though, I'm delighted to say joining us today is Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby, Sarah Pochin. Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Good morning, Julia.
We appreciate it. We were led to believe that everybody in Reform is in a meeting today, so we're very pleased that you have stepped out of it or made time for us today. Because, look, this is the only news in town. We've got lots of other big things happening, but everyone wants to talk about Nigel Farage calling this by-election. We played a clip earlier. He says, look, this is the people versus the establishment. But, you know, as my last guest was just saying, realistically, this is going to be Nigel Farage versus Count Binface. Has his bluff been called?
No, look, Nigel has made it very clear that we are under relentless attack from the establishment and from the media. And Nigel has made this decision to go to the people of Clacton. Nigel would love to go to the people of the country in a general election, but he's not able to do that at the moment.
I mean, I don't think any party is ready for a general election right now, even with or without any crypto donations. The reality is, though, a battle where he's fighting like the other parties and he can be the man of the people. Look, they're battling against me. That doesn't work if it's Count Binface, the Monster AV Ludi Party, and Lawrence Fox from Reclaim UK. Dan Hodges from the Mail on Sunday reckons that by the end of today, the Nigel Farage will have to back out and say, look, the other parties aren't going to actually take part. I won't waste everyone's time, and we're not going to have the by-election. Do you think there's any chance that's going to happen?
No, absolutely not, Julia. I actually think it's incredibly insulting to the electorate that the other parties are not fielding candidates. This great country of ours is all about democracy. We are built on democracy, and we are fighting daily to defend our democracy. And by not putting up other candidates in this election, then that is not supporting our democracy as we should. And why aren't they putting up other candidates? Is it because they do not want to be judged by the electorate? Are the Conservatives afraid once again of losing their deposit in another by-election? Labour know that they don't stand a chance of winning. I think it's because they don't want to be judged by the people of Clacton.
Well, there's no doubt at all in my mind if any of those parties thought they could win, they would be running, and they're not. However, there is an argument, you know, we don't really need a by-election. I would certainly argue that Labour saying this is outrageous and a stunt. Well, Makerfield was also a stunt to get in the Mayor of Manchester to run as their leadership candidate, because apparently 403 MPs on their benches, they didn't find a single one who was up to scratch. Apparently, you can't even find one who's up to scratch to be Foreign Secretary either. They're looking at David Miliband to come from the US. So they've got a leg to stand on there. However, there was no need for Nigel Farage to call a by-election. No one was demanding he stood down. He's simply facing an investigation, as any MP of any party would do, and MPs of all parties have done, for failing to declare something which, under the rules, it appears very clear he should have declared. If he had declared the £5 million gift from his friend, the crypto billionaire Christopher Harbin, if he had declared the help with social media staffers from his big mate, posh George Cottrell, when he became an MP, saying, I don't believe this is relevant, these are personal gifts, but I'll declare it anyway, just to be in no doubt at all, this wouldn't be a story and there wouldn't be an issue.
Well, the first thing to say is that there is no standards investigation as things stand today. No standards investigation has actually started. Two have been requested.
No, there is. No, there's already an investigation over the £5 million.
Not yet. It's not ongoing, Julia. Not yet. It hasn't started.
No, there's a difference between it being... No, it has... There has been a request and they've said they're going to investigate. There is an investigation. That's semantics. That's silly semantics.
All right. The point is that Nigel has said the people are sovereign. I will go to the people. Let the people decide. When it comes
but it's not to the people to decide whether or not he's broken parliamentary rules. The people get to decide if there was a ruling saying he hadn't broken the rules, no problem. If there was a ruling saying he had, and it was so egregious that there should be a suspension from Parliament for 10 days or more, at that point, there could be a recall petition from the people of Clacton. Yes, a 10% minority of the electorate could call for that. And at that point, he has a by-election. He goes, look, this is what's happened. Let the people decide then. But what are they deciding? We don't know the outcome of this. We don't know whether or not he did break the rules or not. I think he probably did, in my view, not reading them. But what are the people deciding?
Well, the first thing to say is that a £5 million gift or a £500 gift, if it is a gift that was given before he was a politician, then he's entitled to accept that gift. There's no issue there. And this is the point.
No one's saying he's not entitled to accept the gift. He was saying in his 20-minute statement, he was talking about I have not misused public funds, one of his statements. No one's accusing him of misusing public funds. They're accusing him of not declaring a gift. Now, you say a £500 gift or a £5 million gift. The reality is, many people watching and listening right now, many people who are voters may have had a £500 gift from a loved one, from a family member, a grandparent. You left money, to avoid the inheritance tax of years. Oh, I'm going to give somebody to the grandkids over the years. I don't think there are many people, I'm thinking on the fingers of one hand we can count, who've had a £5 million gift arrive in their bank account from a crypto billionaire living in Thailand. Just as a thank you, Nigel, your fabulous gift. Have you ever had a £5 million gift from anyone? Because I haven't.
The point is,
so have you?
Is whether or needed. Oh, I never have. Sadly.
No,
that's
so it's not a typical thing, is it? It's not.
But the point is whether or not he needed to declare it, and that is what parliamentary standards will decide.
So why is it an establishment stitch-up? If they're simply investigating and they're going to decide what's the stitch-up about?
The establishment stitch-up is so much bigger than that. It's about this government trying to stop democracy through cancelling local elections. Yep. Reform took the government to court, to the High Court, a week before the ruling. It was settled, and the local elections were reinstated. That's one example. Only this week in the chamber, I think it was Monday, I found myself talking about the attempt, and in fact they will push it through by the government, to stop foreign donations to UK political parties. Now, that's fine, but what about the £4 million that the Labour Party took from the Cayman Islands offshore fund? Does that apply? And so they're trying the establishment is trying every which way it can to stop the march of reform, because they are terrified of reform.
I agree with you. The civil service are plotting, if you guys get into power, how they'll stop what you do. I think it's a political decision for Nigel Farage not to have had all these years the security that I think he needs. I think he'd been a Labour politician, they'd have been given it. Or a Tory. I believe, yes, there is absolutely an establishment stitch-up, and many in the media class, because I work among these people, I know how they feel about it. However, wouldn't that be an argument to be as squeaky clean, as white as you could possibly be, and to not take money from any questionable source, and/or, if you do, declare it and obey the rules, so that they can't stitch you up?
Well, look at Lord Ali giving money to the Labour Party.
Yeah.
There's
he's a Labour peer. He's in the House of Lords, a long-standing Labour campaigner, and he's given money, and it was and we all didn't we all query that and take the mick out of that free gear Keir? That helped scup two-tier gear, free gear Keir. This all helped scupper Keir's number. There was scrutiny of that. That was in the same newspapers that are covering Nigel Farage. That wasn't an establishment stitch-up. That was bang to rights. He hadn't declared money. But that's free suits from his mate in the Labour Party, as opposed to a British crypto billionaire living on the other side of the planet. Do you see? And £5 million. Do you see the difference?
My point is simply this. Did Nigel need to declare it or not? Nigel says not. And the Standards Commission will make its judgment.
So why resign your seat to? Why does he resign his seat to force a by-election, saying this is all a stitch up? When there's an investigation and they'll decide whether he did or whether he didn't, and then he lives with the result of that.
Well, Nigel's point is, look, I'm going to see if the people of Clacton are behind me. I would like to go to the country, but I can't, we'd all have a general election, but Nigel can't do that at the moment. So the next best thing he can do is go to his constituents and say, do you believe me? Do you support me?
But it's not a question.
Still want me in place?
But it's not a question of whether people believe him or support him. Even if that money is 100% for his private security and not for, as he said in one interview, I could spend it on a Ferrari if I want. Even if it's totally legitimate and it's genuinely his good friend saying, I'm genuinely worried about your safety and your security, and there are absolutely 100% legitimate concerns for him, and I completely understand his anger and upset about someone turning up, a journalist, even if they didn't think they were doing anything wrong, turning up at his daughter's home. I understand that visceral anger from somebody who's faced death threats as he had, and the urge to protect your children even when they're grown up. I get all of that. Even if all of that, you can believe Nigel Farage as much as you want, but there are never less rules. There's a registered member's interest. You have to register it. When I was a lobby journalist, when I was a political editor, I had a register. There was a registered interest as well, so that people can see that if I was receiving a lot of money from one organisation for, I don't know, event speaking or whatever, and then I was writing articles promoting them or pushing their interest in my articles in Parliament and using my access, that would be able to be exposed. There's a reason why voters get to know where politicians are getting money from, and it's so we can keep things above board. It's so we don't end up with, you know, Berlusconi in Italy. Why is it at Stitch Up when it's just an investigation that would take place into any MP of any party who didn't declare such a large sum of money?
Because Nigel will say, and I agree with him, that personal donations are okay. And if the Standards Commission find that this was a personal donation and that it didn't need to be declared, then here we are with Nigel being proved quite right. This is yet another attempt by the establishment to stop reforming their tracks.
Well, why not just wait until the results? If he thinks he's done nothing wrong, he gets cleared, then everything's fine.
I think, listen, Nigel's decision has been to call this by-election and to challenge the establishment, if you like, and say, no, you will not stop me. You will...
Not stop legitimately investigating your donations.
You won't wear him...
Do the rules not apply to him? Do the rules not apply to him?
The rules apply to everybody, and so they should.
He's just saying they don't.
No, he's not. What he's saying is I haven't broken any rules. He is saying it was a personal donation.
But then he can wait for the outcome of the investigation and then call a by-election.
Things are so febrile here in Parliament, Julia. I understand why Nigel has done this. He's had Sky News knocking on the home of his daughter. That is overstepping a mark. And Nigel has said, you know what, enough is enough. That is a step too far. This is when we're in the chamber... Why does
that warrant a by-election?
It's a combination of things, isn't it? When we're in the chamber, we are mercilessly attacked.
Oh, you are. No, the barracking as soon as you stand up. Yeah.
We expect that. We expect it. It's not. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's respectful. And I don't think.
I think it's disrespectful to voters, not even just to you guys.
I agree with you. I agree. But the point is, you know, we've put ourselves into that position. But when it comes to family members being dragged into it, or you know, you mentioned earlier bank statements being leaked to the press. This is a step too far. And at some point, someone has to draw a line in the sand and say, stop. There's few options available to reform MPs. We don't have the position of being the official party of opposition and all of the airtime and time in the chamber that gives us. So we have to use other means. Okay. One thing Nigel can do is call a by-election and go to the people.
All right, then. Well, I know I've got to leave you to get to the House of Commons for the Chamber for PMQs. Sarah Poachin, Reform UK MP. Really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much, Steve. Benedict Spence, quick response.
I mean, it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because you're going to get a lot of this from Reform right now, saying it is an establishment stitch-up. And there are many things to suggest that there is, you know, a concerted effort against reform. But you can't get away from the fact Farage has handled this really badly, and there were many points at which he could have rowed this back and made this easier for himself. He hasn't.
Sorry,
he's
I didn't think I
doubled
had to declare it, but I'm going to declare it.
Yeah, he's doubled down, and now he's going to look bad as a result of it.
Well, we shall see. Right, we're going to take a quick break. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what Sarah Poachin had to say. We're going to have Deputy Prime Minister's questions after midday. First up, though, we are going to be talking to the former Press Secretary to the late Queen, Dickie Arbiter. What does he make of Prince Harry's massive defeat in the High Court of his claims against the Mail and the Mail on Sunday? That's up next. This is Talk. The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, was there common sense in the High Court yesterday when a judge handed down a judgment in, well, I suppose, what will definitely be the last big sort of phone hacking wrongdoing alleged by newspapers in terms of celebrities and royals to take place. Certainly after that ruling, which was absolutely fully exonerating the Associated Newspapers Limited, owners of the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, and completely and utterly throwing out all the case brought by not just Prince Harry and Elton John, but also Baroness Doreen Lawrence, Sadie Frost and Liz Hurley and former late Lib Dem MP Simon Hughes, as a test case, effectively, for bringing cases based on, basically the balance of probabilities, had there been blagging, phone hacking, to get hold of stories that were then printed in those newspapers. The judge said, well, there was simply no proof at all that any of it had happened. Threw it out. However, £50 million. Yeah, you heard that right. £50 million has been spent by both sides on that court case. So what the hell happens to all of that? Dickie Arbiter is a former press secretary to the late Queen Elizabeth and joins us now. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
It's absolutely fascinating that these cases cost so much. I mean, there's always a winner in these court cases, and it's nearly always the barristers involved, isn't it? We understand that Prince Harry and others who brought this case, they're being basically funded by insurance that's covering their case. So a lot of these insurance companies have won big in the past. Well, not in this case. Makes it very unlikely that any sort of appeal will be forthcoming. But what did you make of Prince Harry's decision to take part in this case? I think it's his third against a different newspaper group. Some have been settled, some have been won, but this was a resounding defeat.
Well, I do wonder about the advice he was given. It's been suggested in various newspaper reports that the family advised against it.
Yeah.
What legal advice did he receive? Lawyers always like to think that they're going to win, because they do win anyway, because they get a massive payout. And this £50 million, who gets it? And how much goes to Harry's defence barrister? And that poses a big question. As I said, who advised Harry on the basis that he did win 15 of his 33 claims against the Mirror Group? Was he advised then off the back of that, well, you did win 15 claims, let's go for Associated Newspapers? It was a big mistake because Associated Newspapers are a big gun. And you can't win against big guns.
Well, I mean, there was the settlement against the owners of this radio station over allegations there, and we understand, have been publicly made known, but a sizable sum and cost paid, and Harry seemed very satisfied with the outcome of that. He does have a vendetta against the press, and this comes back to it. It was something that was touched on by Paul Dacre, the executive editor of the Associated Newspapers, was the day-to-day editor of the Daily Mail for many, many years, certainly the years that Harry claimed there'd been wrongdoing by his newspaper. He said this had completely exonerated the papers and all of their journalists, and also said, he felt sorry for, he said, poor Harry, a confused young man who is attacking the paper, he said, which had actually been the one that his mother, Diana, who he claims was hounded to death by the media, this is the paper that his mum trusted and liked and was close friends with a number of the journalists.
Well, this is a historic campaign by Harry, and it began probably in 1997 with the unfortunate death of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, in Paris. And he's had this vendetta ever since. The media haven't been whiter than white. They haven't behaved properly in the past, but they're a lot better than they were 25, 30 years ago. But he has this campaign. He talks about privacy, and yet he reveals everything in his book Spare. He reveals everything on Netflix and in Oprah. So where does he draw the line with privacy? It's okay if I say it, but nobody else is allowed to say it.
Well, and you're allowed to invade your own privacy. We know that. You know, he's allowed to write books about himself or Netflix documentary. He wants to. I mean, again, for me, it's someone who's saying they want their privacy, and here's the moment after I just proposed to my wife. I mean, good Lord, could you not keep that as a private moment between you and your closest loved ones? But the fact that he also invaded the privacy of the King and his brother, the Prince of Wales. I mean, really outrageously, and his sister-in-law, Kate, and by all accounts, I mean, Harry lived with William and Kate in the same, apartment, in the palace, Kensington Palace at one time, didn't they? They were so close. He was newly married, but she was like a sister to Harry. And we know there's no love lost between the couple and him now. But repeating text messages, personal moments, accusing his brother of violent assault. These messages over Meghan's bridesmaids' dresses and things. Very private family moments that he put into the public domain, doing exactly what he's condemned the media for.
Well, he's condemning the media for invasion of privacy, and yet he is revealing privacy, but on his terms, and his terms is money. Yeah. He got paid for everything that he did. He got paid by Netflix. He got paid for his book Spare. Don't know whether he got paid for Oprah. That's irrelevant.
I'm pretty sure he did.
But Netflix and his book, and he made a lot of money out of both of them. So it's on his terms. I can say what I like about me, about my family, as long as I get paid for it. But the media are not allowed to say anything. That's nonsense. That is Harry, who's not the brightest bunny on the planet. And he really does need to get a life. He needs to decide time to move on. Well, I've got a family, I've got a wife, I've got children, I've got to move on now.
I don't think the man's got a purpose. I think he obviously found purpose in the military and was absolutely gutted to be sent home when it was going to be exposed that he was fighting in Afghanistan. And he really hasn't had any purpose since then. He is, as his autobiography was, he is the spare. That's his job. I mean, now the actual heir has got 3 children. That's not going to happen. He's not going to realistically, unless it's a horribly tragic accident, going to inherit the throne. And he's kind of he's just like another rich posh kid with his his difficult wife living in California. Is this all about money fundamentally? This case is against the media. That actually he's got a very expensive lifestyle, very expensive wife, and they expected it in a certain manner, and they are going through cash like something else. They're not making the money from the contracts that they thought they'd make. He made a good load of money from his book and Netflix contract originally, but a lot of these things, they might be front loaded, but they're not worth the 100 million plus that many people thought they were going to be worth. And actually, he just wanted to bring this case because he wanted some money.
Well, you made a very valid point a few moments ago, and I've said all along his biggest mistake in life was leaving the army. To him, that was a purpose in life. To him, that was family. Yes, he had his blood family, but he had his military family, and Harry is a military animal. And his biggest mistake was walking out of the military 10 years ago, since when he has not had a purpose in life. He can't help his wife sell jam, because it's not selling anyway. And the only thing that he's actually done, and he didn't do it, he had a ghostwriter, was his book.
Well, then there's the Invictus Games, which is a magnificent achievement. But again, that's not a full-time job. He's got staff for that.
It is a terrific incentive. It's a terrific movement, and it fits purpose for veterans to put them back on the road to being part of the community. Because when you get PSTD and you're injured, it does affect you mentally. And Invictus has put people back in very much like the Conqueror Games in the United States. So that is a purpose, but it's not 24/7 and it's not 12 months of the year.
Exactly.
It's pity.
Do you think that Prince Harry's now, he may or may not see the King King's not going to get to see his grandchildren that he barely knows, they wouldn't even know what he looked like, he wouldn't know what they look like. Do you think he's just going to slink back to California once again with his tail between his legs?
Well, he's eventually going to slink back to California and lick his wounds. And everybody, you mentioned just now about reconciliation reconciliation with his dad and his dad seeing his grandchildren. Everybody's forgotten about the other side of the family. Thomas Markle hasn't even met his grandson, let alone his son-in-law, let alone his grandchildren. So there's reconciliation on both sides. Unfortunately, it's not that easy over here, because every time Harry says something or there's a meeting with his dad, the door hits him in the shoulder even up before. I
mean, that's the thing. What I love is that apparently Meghan doesn't want to see her father because everything goes in the papers. But of course, the risk for the royal family is seeing Meghan and Harry is that everything goes in the papers. Really good to talk to you, Dickie Arbiter, former press secretary to the late Queen. Benedict Spence.
Everything goes in the papers, but I don't read it. Honestly, this whole thing about Harry,
I do, and then I hate myself for it.
Doesn't it make you feel grubby?
I feel dirty.
Yes, it's better when you cleanse yourself and just stop doing it.
I think the whole thing's all very, very sad. He's a very angry man. He would have been better off. I know he couldn't carry on fighting abroad. He'd been better off overseas, or fighting, still doing something purposeful. Yeah, I just don't think people do very well when they're just sort of hanging around in a mansion in Montecito. Although I'd be willing to try it, but I couldn't be married to Meghan. Anyway, Deputy PMQ's coming up next. David Lammy versus James Cleverly. That could be quite lively. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 2 minutes past midday, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, it's great to have your company. Any moment now, Prime Minister's questions will start. Of course, it's Deputy Prime Minister's questions today, because Never Hear Keir is, of course, over there in Ankara, enjoying another little bit of red carpet walking, pretending to be the big I am in his last few dying days of his premiership. Instead, it's going to be Deputy Prime Minister, for some bizarre reason, he is in that job, David Lammy, and up against him will be, they always put up someone different, could be quite a laugh, Shadow Housing Secretary James Cleverly. I think this could be quite a lively one. Joining me for the chat to talk about this, delighted today, still with us, Conservative commentator Benedict Spence, who we've not heard enough from today, because we've had lots and lots of guests, but also Talk presenter Peter Carball, as per usual. A very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. We've also going to discuss more on Nigel Farage's gamble of resigning to fight this by-election in Clacton. Presumably, He won't be in the Commons. We've just been speaking to Sarah Pochard, who was going to the Commons. I know they were all having a big reform meeting. We've also going to be talking about NATO and that summit, and also that Rochdale rape gang ringleader. Apparently, Pakistan has set out some demands for taking him back. Yeah, here's our demand. You take him back, or that's it. Zip, doors closed to you forever. Quick response from you before we get to PMQs. We'll, as soon as we get those exchanges, we'll go to you straight away, but they haven't even started PMQs yet, and there's a load of flim-flam beforehand. But Peter, what do you make of Nigel Farage's decision yesterday? Because a lot of us are saying, like, oh, it seemed like a good idea, but has his bluff been called? Is he going to end up with egg on his face?
Well, it's extremely bold at the moment. He's against a man dressed as a bin and possibly Lawrence Fox, so he may not get the publicity he wants from that, but what he's always very good at spinning is spinning all of that and working it to his advantage. At the moment,
don't ever underestimate
never underestimate Nigel Farage. He's the most consequential politician of the last quarter century. It will be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, he's going to win, there's no doubt about that, but it has taken the focus off other things, and I think actually this may actually invite more scrutiny to Nigel Farage over his doings or declarations.
Well, I mean, this is it. I mean, of course it will, surely not. I mean, Benedict Spence...
Whenever anybody says he's going to win, there's a sudden intake of breath, because I think it's just exactly what would happen is that people would tactically vote for the man dressed as a bin because they'd think it was very funny.
As Benedict was pointing out earlier, voted with boat-face.
I don't want to tempt fate. I don't want to say he's going to win.
Hangus the monkey became mayor of Hartley-Brewer.
This is true.
His one manifesto, his one manifesto commitment.
Literally.
His one manifesto commitment was to give every school child a banana. He became mayor and said there's no money in the budget. That's what happened.
I mean, sort of thing Andy Burnham's going to do, isn't it? But it is interesting, you know. We're not talking much about the NATO summit. I mean, just because, frankly, we're all more excited about stuff going on back home, and we've spent a lot of time talking about defence and Donald Trump. But it is extraordinary. People talking about Nigel Farage, talking about his finances and I mean, there's just nothing. I mean, I look in the papers. Where is there anything about Andy Burnham?
Yeah, nothing.
And what the hell? He's going to be Prime Minister on the 20th.
No scrutiny.
I'm going to be away next week, so this is like, I don't even have to watch Prime Minister doing his last week in office.
You mean you won't be tuning in from your sun lounger?
Oh, absolutely. He's going to be number one.
For the farewell
I'll be
drone.
on a party boat somewhere in the Med, and I will care not a jot.
Larging it.
I literally can't wait to never see the back of that man. Oh no, sorry, he's going to be Secretary General of the United Nations or something, isn't he? But I mean, of NATO. But we've got a man who's about to be Prime Minister. We haven't got a clue who he's going to put you as
Chancellor. One broadcast interview.
Yeah,
one.
By the way, with no journalist questions. He had a soft soap bubble bath from Andrew Marr on LBC, and Reddit. That is literally it. We don't know a single policy.
Yeah, exactly, or who the Chancellor's going to be, or anything really what he wants to do. He's given us this one speech, one interview, one Reddit, and actually we know very, very little about him. There's very little scrutiny on him because there's very little to scrutinise.
Is that the thing? He's still trying to come up with his own policies.
Well, the concerning thing was after the Reddit, people's opinions went down. They were thinking, good Lord, this isn't great, is it? But honestly, that's now the standard where journalists, a lot of journalists, not all, but a lot, actually simply are not interested. And then when you have the situation around Farage, which, as you said, these are justified questions, but when they treat that as more of a circus than, oh, the governing party has parachuted their man into a safe seat and nobody is allowed to scrutinise.
But also, if we're going to have a joke at a stunt of a by-election, Makerfield,
exactly.
MP sitting there, you should have resigned as an MP,
and
not just as a minister.
Keir Starmer said it was a stunt. I mean, give me a break, seriously.
They really haven't got But there's a small part of it. The Office of Budget Responsibility is saying that basically we're going to have a financial crisis because we've got so much borrowing unless we have £120 billion either added in tax take or taken off spending. These are serious numbers. This is not just a bit chill chomp benefit.
And we know they're not going to be taken off spending. It's going to be tax increases.
Well, hey, I mean, every question today should be, hey, Andy Burnham, how are you going to deal with this? This isn't the Tories saying it. This is the Office for Budget Responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact is there isn't enough money for what they want to do. And if he wants to do anything more, he's going to have to raise even more than that. So
there isn't any money. Full stop. We don't even need to end that sentence.
Yes, exactly. And I think when they are looking at new things that Andy Burnham wants to do, or even just the same things, defence, massive black hole there as well, and we don't know what he thinks about that. We don't know if he'll fulfil that commitment.
Right, let's go live to the House of Commons. James Cleverly is standing in for Kemi Badenoch.
Under a new mayor.
Shadow Secretary of State, Sir James Cleverly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to echo the Right Honourable Gentleman's tribute to Sir George Howarth and pass on my party's condolences to his friends, family and loved ones. I also wish to echo his support and encouragement to the England football team in their forthcoming match against Norway. And of course, I will echo his words about those people murdered on 7/7, their friends, their families, but also pay tribute to the emergency services that did so much on that day. Will he apologise to the victims of the rapists, sexual predators and paedophiles that he is planning to release early?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to welcome the Shadow Housing Secretary to the dispatch box. He, of course, could have been doing this job every week if he were better with numbers. He's the Foreign Secretary. He was the Foreign Secretary in government that botched Brexit, the Home Secretary in a government that decimated neighbourhood policing, and one of the shortest-serving education secretaries in our history. Now, he asks about a very serious issue, and every decision we have taken has been based on public safety and delivering justice for victims. Let's talk about the context. The last Labour government built 28,000 prison places. We're building 14,000 by 2031. We've already delivered 3,200. Under the Tories, they closed 23 prisons. 23. Gloucester closed. Shrewsbury closed. Portsmouth closed. Holloway closed. Northallerton closed. And what are they now? A block of flats. That's why we have to have an early release scheme. That's why we passed the Sentencing Act. And we're putting community powers locally to make sure that we protect the public.
Sir James Cleverly. Mr. Speaker, he makes a joke about use of figures. Let me give him a figure. 50,000 prisoners released early in just 2 years on his watch. And I am genuinely shocked. Mr. Speaker, that when given the opportunity to apologise to victims, he very publicly failed to do so. And let me remind him what this is about. Let me quote Fiona Goddard, herself a victim of grooming gangs, who has been brave and open about how his policy will impact her. And she says, "Finding out that they may be released early has completely set me back. I have barely left the house. I feel constantly anxious, frightened and unsafe. I can barely sleep." This is the impact his policy is having on victims. He refuses to apologise. But why is he pursuing a policy which he must know is both wrong and dangerous?
This is a very serious issue, and the Honourable Gentleman is experienced in this House. He knows that while he was Home Secretary, they had an early release scheme that set out 10,000 offenders, 10,000 under his... They had 6 schemes within a year. They had a scheme that they announced on the 6th of June 2023, another scheme on the 17th of October 2023, another scheme on the 8th of March 2024, another in April, another in May, another in June, all before the election. And that's why Rishi Sunak, it's rumoured, called the election in the first place. They left a system with just 83 empty cells. That's what the Justice Secretary previous to me inherited when she came into office. That's why we had to pass the sentencing scheme. He hasn't said what they would do now to fix the system. Of course we think of every victim. And that's why we're notifying victims in discussion with all victims. I sat last week in my surgery with a victim of grooming gangs. All of us want to see offenders locked up. That's why we've got to have prison capacity.
Sir James Cleverly. Mr. Speaker, he talks about 10,000 early release over 14 years of Conservative government. They have released 50,000 in 2 years. And he knows it's wrong. He is a good man. He must know that it is wrong to release 5,000 serious criminals, including rapists, including paedophiles. And not only does he know it's wrong, but his party knows it's wrong. 400 Labour MPs and not one voted to support the government's policy in the vote last night. They know it's wrong. The country knows it's wrong, but he insists on pursuing it anyway. So if he will not change course, will he at least make this guarantee that not one rapist or paedophile will be released early later on this year?
He hasn't proposed what they would do if they were in office. They released 10,000 with 4 different schemes. No impact assessment when they released them. No victim contact when they released them. No warning. They did it on the sly. And let us be clear. Yes, we've got more probation officers. They, of course, cut probation, decimated it because of Chris Grayling. We've invested £700 million in probation. We're rolling out the largest programme of tagging in our history. We're forcing offenders to stay boxed in certain areas rather than where victims are. We're creating alcohol, pub, football and driving bans. We're implementing income reduction orders, and we're expanding chemical castration for sex offenders. None of it happened when they were in power.
Sir James Cleverly.
Mr. Speaker, he will look back on this exchange, and I think he will be shocked by how this is coming across. No apology to the victims, no guarantee that paedophiles and rapists will not be released early. We all know that releasing dangerous criminals on purpose is the wrong thing. But not content with doing that, he is hell-bent on releasing dangerous criminals by accident. Yep. Last year, in response to the questions from my right honourable friend, the member for South Suffolk, he claimed that under Labour he had got a grip of accidental releases. Yet we now know there have been more accidental releases in the last 2 years than in the entirety of the last Parliament. So I give him another chance. Will he apologise to the country for his abject failure at keeping prisoners in prison where they belong?
I've got to say, this is rich coming from the honourable gentleman. Exactly. They had 14 long years in power. They wrecked neighbourhood policing. He was Home Secretary. Prisons were at bursting point. That's why they called the general election. And they let out offenders in secret. And that is why we have the Sentencing Act that passed through this House and the House of Lords. What we're doing is we are getting thousands more bobbies on the beat. We're toughening up probation. They decimated it. And we have to have the space to knock up dangerous criminals. That's why we passed the sentencing bill.
Sir James Cleverly.
Mr. Speaker, it's the dangerous criminals that he is letting out early. So he refuses to apologise to victims, he refuses to guarantee that sexual offenders and rapists will not be released early. Another thing that the country and indeed this House knows instinctively is wrong is his personal crusade to scrap trial by jury. We know that it will not clear the backlog. We know that it undermines fundamental British freedoms, and we know the legal profession is united against it. So will he now admit that it is wrong, and will he commit to reverse his proposals to scrap trial by jury?
Well, let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. There is no proposal before this House to scrap trial by jury. The honourable member needs to do better and get on the detail. There is a threshold change. There is a threshold change. Margaret Thatcher made a change to jury trials. David Cameron made a change to jury trials. The vast majority of criminal cases in this country are dealt with by magistrates, again, which they cut. We're restoring the magistracy, and they can do more. We're investing in our courts. They ran our courts down. We're modernising our courts. We're introducing digital ID, and we need reform.
Sir James Cleverly.
Mr. Speaker, he talks in glowing terms about what he's claiming to do. What we are actually seeing this government doing is stripping money from where it's needed and squandering it on the welfare bill, which is ballooned by £20 billion this year alone. And he talks about getting over the detail. Here's a simple detail for him. When I was Home Secretary, we had more police officers than at any point in British history. Since taking over, that number has dropped by over 2,000 officers. Mr. Speaker, the dispatch box last week, my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, highlighted this government's failure to defend us internationally. Today, I have outlined his failure to defend us domestically. If the soon-to-be Prime Minister... Is he in the room anywhere? No. If the soon-to-be Prime Minister does not want to be complicit in his failure, he should come out and condemn this plan, not just hint that he opposes it. Because if Labour cannot protect the citizens of this country, either domestically or internationally, then what on earth is the point of them?
Mr. Speaker, he insists on proving that he can't count. We lost 16,000 police officers when they were in power. Mr. Speaker, the British people haven't forgotten what the party opposite did to our country. After 2 years of a Labour government, I'll compare our record every day of the week. Their record is the biggest fall in living standards in recorded history. Our record is the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. Their record is wrecking our criminal justice system. Our record is bringing down violent crime. Their record is millions of people stuck on NHS waiting lists. Our record is cutting NHS waiting lists, the fastest rate in history. Their record is cutting defence. He was a reservist. They hollowed out the armed forces. Our record is the biggest boost to defence spending since the early 1990s. And their record is plunging hundreds of thousands of children into poverty. Our record is lifting 500,000 of children out of poverty. I'll take our record over theirs any day of the week.
Well, what an interesting exchange that was. Deputy Prime Minister's questions. David Lammy standing in for Never Hear Keir, who's at the NATO summit in Ankara. He much prefers a red carpet rather than taking questions, certainly from Kemi Badenoch. And David Lammy was facing questions from the Shadow Housing Secretary, James Cleverly. And joining me in the studio still, watching all of that, is Benedict Spence and also talk presenter Peter Cobble. I thought that was a very interesting tone that James Cleverly took. I think the question straight away, will he apologise to victims of rapists and paedophiles for the early release, which is being planned for thousands of people. I mean, very dangerous criminals, which David Lammy points out we need to release people from prison early, some serving just a third of their sentence, because we need to put more dangerous criminals away. And yet there's dangerous criminals they're letting out. Very interesting, I thought, the tone, Peter. I mean, when he said, you know, you're a good man. Yeah. You must know this is wrong. I thought that was very, very powerful. That was a masterclass by James Cleverly.
I think we saw a statesman-like performance by James Cleverly today. I think that was something that really will hit home. He was deliberate, he was quiet in what he said, and his tone was spot on. Instead, from David Lammy, he only really has one mode. He said, oh, you can't count, and come on, man, and all this kind of stuff that he always does, and he didn't engage with the questions at all.
He declined to apologise, what, 3 times, 4 times?
I mean, he wasn't going to, at any stage, he wasn't going to say that his policy about jury trials was wrong either, and I think James Cleverly won that because David Lammy failed to meet him where he was. He just was in the same mode as he always is.
Yeah, again, I think that, again, statesman-like tone, the sort of thing, in sorrow, not in anger, that played very well, didn't it?
I think, without wanting to read too much into it, I think before, James Cleverly had a bit of a reputation for being a bit of a lad, you know, being a bit, a bit boisterous.
It'd be quite a funny PMQs, but not...
And actually, sometimes that got him into trouble. And I think one of the things that you could say about the Tories, and I've said it earlier on the show, which is sort of beyond Kemi Badenoch, there's not an awful lot there that people like. I do think, therefore, it's important when people like James Cleverly get the opportunity, they put forward the idea that they are not just sort of, I don't know, some sort of Essex Y boy or something like that, that they can perform the role.
And actually very different from Kemi Badenoch as well. I mean, that was a different style.
I mean, he must understand also Cleverly, clearly, when he's trying to joke in the past, it's backfired on him. So don't try and do that again. Try and perform a different role, and it seems to have worked.
He certainly joke when you're talking about the release of paedophiles and rapists, and he quoted Fiona Goddard, one of the victims who was raped from the age of 14 onwards by a grooming gang, and we spoke, we quoted her on the show the other day. But it's very interesting with that. His fourth question, he began by saying, I think he, referring to David Lammy, I think he will look back and be shocked how this is coming across.
Yeah.
No apology to victims and no guarantees. And it's interesting, again, he went into welfare, but they've got money for welfare, but they haven't got it for other things. But also that final line, you know, basically, if the government can't protect citizens domestically or internationally, of course, you know, we've got the defence being discussed at the NATO summit, what is the point of them? I mean, that Benedict, that, you know, I thought there was a hands-down win.
Yeah. I think so. I think it was pretty straightforward, and I think actually David Lammy was caught slightly, wrong-footed. Now, he's justified. There is a lot of justification whenever the Conservatives make these kind of criticisms, and the Labour Party can turn around and go, well, look what we inherited.
Yeah.
And I think especially when it comes to prisons, actually, that amongst all the bad things the Tories did, the closure of so many prisons, the cutting of the MOJ budget, and just not replacing it because who cares about prisons and lawyers and that sort of stuff.
Turns out you do.
Yeah, when you've got the prisoners being released
They literally at one point had 80%. And again, criticism in September 2024, and I'm writing columns about it, talking about it on the show, when we had that early release. It was supposed to be sort of, should we say, lesser criminals than rapists and paedophiles, but there were domestic abusers who were released under the loophole. And then we saw these people, you know, in their best tracksuits outside. Some being picked up by people in Ferraris. I mean, things, you know, I wonder how that's funded. But I mean,
it was Nigel Farage.
Yes, he could have bought one with that £5 million if he so chose. But you know, it was not a good look. But again, the Tory government would have had to have done the same thing.
Yes, they would have, and they had a deliberate policy of keeping because they felt they had to, the prisons population at 99% of capacity. The Conservatives in 14 years only added 500 prison places. Many, many more were needed because of their own changes.
They had started building more, which is what the Labour Party did, but they're still not going to be enough. No. One final thing I want to ask about. The final question, James Cleverly was saying about, you know, not having money and just saying, you know, on this issue, you know, and he said, you know, the soon-to-be Prime Minister, meaning Andy Burnham, because is he here? And he wasn't in the chamber, and he just said, you know, he's got to do more than just hinting, as he's done, that he doesn't support this policy. He's got to be clear about it. Because at the end of the day, this is going to be something just like under Keir Starmer in his first few months of office. This is going to happen under his watch. And guess what? We're going to hold the person who runs the country responsible. But what the hell is Andy Burnham not doing at PMQ?
All Andy Burnham has said, well, he wouldn't want to be a distraction, blah, blah, blah.
Is he trying to come up with a policy?
Maybe he lost his tie.
Maybe he
I suspect he only owns one.
Yes.
So. It's interesting as well.
You do have to wear a tie in the House
of Commons. The only thing that he has actually said in the House of Commons since he's become an MP again is his oath of allegiance. That's it.
Well, he can't speak because he hasn't given his maiden speech yet.
Exactly. So he may well become Prime Minister without giving his maiden speech. So you need to get a move on. He hasn't got time.
That's quite a maiden speech, isn't it? I just find it absolutely fascinating how the shine.
Sorry, would that have ever happened before? That somebody's maiden speech would be his first speech as Prime Minister? Has that ever happened before?
Maybe with the Earl of Hume, because he was...
That's not right. I don't even care whether that's right. He could have made that completely up, but we're going to give a round of applause.
I'm not going to check.
Alec Douglas Hume was in the Lords. Then there was a by-election to make him an MP, but he was Prime Minister before he became in the Lords.
And frankly, I'm disappointed in you. I thought they trained you in this stuff at private schools. So we should go, yes, of course. That's the correct response. We'll all practice that. Do that again, and we'll give the we knew what you were talking about response.
Maybe it was the Earl of Hume.
Yes,
Alec,
of course.
Must have been Alec,
See?
Good old boy.
It's like it never happened. Right, I want to get to your calls. No, you're not. You're still on the board ready to talk about Nigel Farage. We'll get to those calls up next. Big thanks to Peter Carmel for joining us with all his highfalutin knowledge. And Benedict Smith staying with us. This is Talk. The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 12:29 is the time. I am the home of common sense. And this is Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benedict Spencer with us. Let's get to your call. So lots of you still want to get your say on Nigel Farage dramatically resigning. He's called that People versus the Establishment by-election. I assume he wasn't there at PMQs, but then neither was the future about to be Prime Minister. None of the main parties are going to stand against him. Do you support Nigel Farage, or as his bluff being called? Let's talk to Chris in Hereford. Hello, Chris.
Hello, good afternoon.
How are you? Very well. What do you want to say?
Nigel Farage made a mistake here. I think he should have declared what he should have declared, sort of thing. So there's lots of money to have.
If in any doubt, just declare it. Wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't agree with all the personal attacks on him and his family and all that sort of thing. But the thing is, it's a strange decision he made yesterday, and I just thought he'd sort of turn around and say, "Well, I've had enough of this. I'll step down as basically as an MP," and then not put himself forward, and then just said, I've had enough of all this.
I mean, I've got to be honest with you, when we saw on my show that he was going to make a statement at 2 o'clock, I mean, I was madly messaging Reform people. So I'm like, is he standing down? Is he standing down?
Well, he looked, as I said, in the first of it, he should have declared what he should have declared, and this would have never been like...
Did it appear at first, though? I mean, it was a really punchy speech. We played some clips of it. Did it appear that actually he'd played a blind and he was coming out? And I thought, oh, yeah, he's played a blind. And then a minute after posting a tweet saying, oh, he's coming out fighting, I thought, oh, hold on a minute. I remember David Davis doing this, different circumstances years ago, but the other parties didn't stand against him, so it was kind of a damp squib. And have the other parties basically put egg on his face?
Well, as I said, it's going to be a bit of a... This by-election is going to be a bit of a sort of farce, because there's only one person to stand, or whatever, King Bin-Face, or whatever monster loony party and all that. And it's just... I don't know, it's just...
Doesn't quite work. And he didn't have to be in this mess. Interestingly, actually, Kevin Schofield, who is a very respected journalist, a broadcaster, political editor of HuffPost, and he says, as he understands it, that actually it's too late for Reform to back out of the by-election, something that Dan Hodges, the Mail on Sunday, suggested earlier. He says Nigel Farage is no longer an MP. The by-election must go ahead, or else Clacton will have no MP. Someone, I have to say, the first response, someone said, would that be a bad thing for people of Clacton? Would you notice? Anyway, let's go to Tristan, who is in Bedford. Hello, Tristan.
Hello, Julia. Nice talking to you.
Thank you for calling.
Just wanted to say, I think basically what Farage did yesterday was just to give himself some respite. I think that's the only reason he done it, and because of the establishment, or what he calls the establishment, haven't followed him, he sort of seems a bit like a damp squib. But going back to what Brendan O'Neill was saying, it definitely feels like there is a witch hunt. It definitely feels like that, because the thing is, if the parliamentary standards authority are coming down on Nigel Farage, why didn't they come down on Rachel Reeves when she lied on her CV?
But that's not about a declaration. This is about the register of members' interest. I think Rachel Reeves should have been sacked for that, in the same way that Louise Haig has been lied on. You've basically been elected under false pretences, but that's a matter for an internal sort of ethical conduct within government.
Okay, fair enough. But the media didn't really got home in on it. They sort of it was only like about a day or two, and then it was quiet. But because this has really rattled Nigel, it's going to carry on. It's going to carry on going and going and going. And the thing is, because we've got Labour are basically, they're changing certain rules when it comes to elections, and also they're trying to take charge of the algorithm about certain platforms. They are going to be pushing the narrative so far into their favour because they can feel they're starting to lose and now think they're going to try to get things into their favour, and they're doing it underhandedly.
Yeah,
it is immensely sinister. I find it immensely sinister. And the other thing is what Brendan was saying also is because of what is happening with Richard Tice, with them digging into his bank statements and things like that. People are going to really, if Reform wants to get a majority of government to get over 300, MPs or anything like that, there isn't going to be, ordinary people are going to feel very put off by this. I mean, I'm a member of Reform, and I was looking to become a local councillor, but I don't want things being dug into.
We had a caller. He's been he's gone through the first stage of process to become a Reform candidate at the next parliamentary election, and he said exactly the same, because I don't think I want it. I'm thinking. I like to think I haven't got skeletons in my closet if I ever ran for election for any party, because mine are all just open and out there. But wouldn't stop the media going for me. I would. God knows what they'd come up on me. But I'm thinking. I think it's all out there. But. Yeah, I don't think many of us can face that scrutiny, and that is a big issue for public life. Tristan, really appreciate that call. Thank you. Reg is in Reading. Reg, what do you want to say?
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
Great show. I wanted really to talk about the hypocrisy of the Labour Party, because it's all very well to hound Nigel Farage, but the media never talks about the most corrupt donations in our public life, which is the 20+ million the unions give Labour. And what are the conditions? Well, we now know what they were. We have the highest minimum wage in Europe. We've got the most restrictive employment legislation. And continually, we have improved rights for trade unions in the workplace. And the media, for some reason, completely ignores these huge amounts of money that are given by the unions. Why is that?
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point. And again, I think that no organisation, no individual should be allowed to give large sums of money to anyone involved in politics, political party or individual. I think that solves everything overnight. Reg, appreciate that call. Thank you. Interesting. I'll get your response to this, Benedict Spence, because during P&Qs, the Liberal Democrat Deputy Leader Daisy Cooper has been asking questions today. Obviously, David Lammy is taking questions for Never Hear Keir. And she's asked David Lammy to join her party in urging Nigel Farage to be blocked from leaving Parliament until the investigations into his donations are complete. David Lammy replied, everyone can see that Farage is calling election to distract from the fact that he's up to his neck in sleaze. He said he's got serious questions to answer and he can't run away from them. Labour isn't going to be part of this circus. He says, I hear it's the people versus the establishment, the city trader, Putin-admiring professional politician who's pals with crypto billionaires versus Count Binface.
Putin.
The Putin is ridiculous. The quote about Putin was he admires him as a politician. How could you not? The guy plays a bull. He's an awful, murderous, horrific human being. But my God, he runs rings round the rest of the world. That's why he's still in. He's
as the head of the Russian state for as long as he has.
Admiring Putin.
Yeah, come on. This is very childish that they keep doing this.
They know it. But that is going to be very damaging. That's exactly the sort of thing. But again, they're talking about up to his neck in sleaze. Yeah. What is it? What is the sleaze? I don't think there is a sleaze allegation. Just you have to declare the money.
Yeah, but again,
this into something more.
And it's why it's nonsense when you've got people coming out saying, "Oh, well, it's not a part of an establishment stitch-up." You can hear the language that's being used and the fact that they are all coordinating with each other. Obviously, that's what's going on here. Okay. And also, I just have to say, I think it's ridiculous that you might try to stop somebody from resigning from Parliament.
That's utterly bizarre, isn't it? 12:37 is the time. Up next, I'm going to talk about that NATO summit. What is going on there with the former commander of the US Army in Europe? This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Let's get straight to my next guest. The small matter of a NATO summit and obviously ongoing events in the Middle East as well. Let's talk to Ben Hodges, former commander of the US Army Europe. Lieutenant General Hodges, thank you so much as always for joining us.
Julia, thank you for the privilege.
Well, you're very honoured, sir. Look, let's talk first of all just about what's going on in Iran, because this 60-day ceasefire for talks doesn't seem to be going terribly well. We've seen some tit-for-tat missiles against boats, against US facilities across the Middle East from Iran. What is going on there? And really, how sure can we be that there will be any long-term ceasefire and the Strait of Hormuz actually reopened properly?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very long time. The Trump administration has not been very transparent about what's going on. We do not have very good negotiators working with the Iranians. I mean, it's been a mess from the very beginning, and so here we are now. People are acting surprised that the Iranians fought back, but I mean, a ceasefire when there's 80 targets that U.S. hit last night, and the Iranians attacked 85 targets last night. That doesn't sound like a ceasefire that's under stress. It sounds like it's over.
No, well, indeed. I mean, can you negotiate with the Iranians? This is the question. I mean, this is a religious death cult, you know. They're currently having 3 days of funeral commemorations for the latest Ayatollah who's dead. Rather too over-reverential coverage of that, in my view, by many of our mainstream broadcasters here in the UK. You know, he wasn't a great world figure. He was a mass murderer of his own people. But they're saying, you know, death to the United States, death to Donald Trump. But I mean, you know, he killed their leader, then wanted to kill their American leader. Seems like a fair exchange to me. That's the risk you take. But can you negotiate with people whose entire raison d'etre since 1979 has been, you know, the death of Israel, America, Britain, and Western civilization?
Well, I think if you're wanting to have any kind of a negotiation, you have to have some sort of leverage. And I think, unfortunately, we've seen the limit of American leverage in this particular case, partly because the administration did this without working with all of our allies. We also took for granted that with the destruction or the decapitation of the regime, that the people would go back out in the street again and it'd be all over, kind of nice and clean like Venezuela. So hubris on the part of the administration also, and not understanding who and what the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, what they really were.
Yeah, absolutely. A big concern there. Well, no doubt that is in part of the conversation that world leaders are having at the NATO summit in Ankara in Turkey right now. But Donald Trump, once again, I mean, you could imagine all these world leaders, including our about-to-be gone Prime Minister, just arriving with such trepidation. There must be so many meetings on the sidelines about how to handle Donald Trump. We know Mark Rutte is the Trump whisperer as the NATO Secretary General, but Donald Trump turning up, saying he's very upset with NATO. He's launched what being called a blistering attack on the alliance. He arrived yesterday. He said the US has been treated unfairly. They paid disproportionately, demanding that people spend more. I mean, he's absolutely 100% right on that. But he's also talking about how, you know, basically he's going to take Greenland. Denmark doesn't want or need Greenland. Denmark being a member of NATO, member of the EU, and this territory of theirs being threatened all the time. It must be incredibly hard for the other world leaders to deal with him, but especially when he does have a point on the spending on defence and the capability that Europe has, because he's got them banged to rights, hasn't he?
Yeah, for sure. Allies from Canada and the European allies have not lived up to expectations or obligations.
Yeah.
But they should not be doing this to please the American president. They should be doing it because it's in the best interest of their own population and to protect their strategic interests. So yes, it is a fair criticism. Every president since Truman has had this same complaint. But the president also, I think, it's unhelpful that he is so critical of the alliance. The cohesion of the alliance has always been the secret sauce, and he erodes that every day, every time he is so harshly critical of allies. And I would also say I don't think it's the right strategy to use American troop deployments in Europe as a reward or punishment. That's not why we have the troops over here. They're here to protect America's interests, and because Europe allows us to be able to project power elsewhere.
It's very difficult. But that said, I also understand. I don't see why taxpayers in America should be funding our defence. I think we should be funding our own defence. It's interesting. I mean, he's very angry with Spain. He's declared he'd ceased trading with Spain. He said Spain is a wasted cause. I mean, it's got a socialist government. Their policies, I mean, in terms of Israel condemning America over the Iran policy and over Palestine, they're giving last count, what was it, 1.2, 1.3 million new arrivals from Africa and the Middle East, and anyone who'd been in the country 5 months being given rights to work and live in Spain. I mean, not of other European leaders aren't happy, but he said Spain's a wasted cause. We don't want to do any trade business with Spain anymore. They're bad people. Spain is a terrible partner in NATO. They don't participate. They don't pay. I don't want anything to do with Spain. That's not looking good for Spain, is it?
Well, it also is very revealing. The United States has a trade surplus with Spain. So I don't know how we think we're going to punish them. In the Navy base and the air base that we have in Spain, somebody should get the president a map of the world and understand why the straits there are so important for the United States. Why would we not want to have bases right there at the entrance and exit of the Mediterranean? So I think because the administration is so transactional in what they do, that does not lead you to making the best strategic decisions.
The long-term stuff that really matters. Look, you're a former commander of U.S. troops, U.S. Army in Europe. You know how strategically significant this is for your country.
Well, I think people have taken for granted, what our allies allow us to do. I mean, everything that we do in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East passes through Europe, through the bases, airspace, the intelligence sharing. That intelligence sharing, of course, UK has been our best partner in intelligence sharing. That's based on trust. And so if the president's unhappy with a particular country about something, if it erodes that trust, it damages us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Donald Trump saying that, the ceasefire in Iran may be over. Ukraine, obviously, is still high on the agenda, especially for European leaders at this NATO summit. And President Zelensky has been there. He's been addressing them. And there's big concern about their basically running out of missiles in order to actually, take down the missiles which Russia has been raining on Kyiv for the last few weeks. How confident are you that the West, whoever it is going to be able to supply enough weaponry for Ukraine to continue? Let's face it, they're no longer on the back foot, very much Russia looking on the back foot. And how likely do you think it is, we had a guest on the show yesterday predicting that actually it's very likely that Putin would want to come to the table? What do you make of those claims?
Well, certainly the momentum has shifted in favor of Ukraine. There's no doubt about that. They've stopped Russian ground operations, and the Black Sea Fleet is not a factor really anymore. Ukraine is now causing great damage to Russia's oil and gas export capability, which is essential for Russia to sustain this war. And we're looking at potentially the isolation of Crimea, and making Crimea untenable for Russian forces. So a lot of things are going in the right direction. The one thing Ukraine cannot do is they are not able to stop the ballistic missiles that are coming in, as you've talked about. And of course, Patriot is the weapon that is best as a counter ballistic missile system. And there's just not enough. We've been too slow to make them. I hope that the United States will license other countries to manufacture Patriot. That would expand the capacity. Ukraine is ready to do that now.
OK, well, we shall see what happens. Hope to speak to you again soon. Ben Hodges, retired former commander of the US Army in Europe. Response to that, Benedict?
Well, I think it's right to recognise that the tide has, if not turned, it's certainly ground to a halt in Ukraine. But all that does for me is just continue the frustration that for so long the Ukrainians were fighting with one hand tied behind their back. Now that they are able to strike Russian, especially Russian oil and gas infrastructure in Russia and to do so with impunity, without the fear that, oh, the Russians might escalate. Look what it's doing now to Russia's war effort. And you just think, how many years has this conflict been going on now? And we go back to the very start where they were being given substandard equipment, or they were being given good equipment at all, but you can't use it only in certain circumstances. So much damage could have been avoided if Western nations had had a bit more bite about them and been prepared to face off against the Russians, which they weren't. We could have avoided so much bloodshed.
Oh, absolutely. It was just extraordinary, abject failure on our part. Just some breaking news. This is from the Guardian newspaper. They raised a story yesterday, and again, they'd raised this before Nigel Farage made his announcement. He would make a statement yesterday about that by-election. The Guardian revealed that this £5 million gift provided to Nigel Farage by the cryptocurrency billionaire, they revealed that they'd originally reported that, and talking about how this had been referred to the National Crime Agency over money laundering concerns. They now revealed that separately banking staff judged that transfers of funds between Richard Tice, the party's deputy leader, who had been due to come on the show today, by the way, and major donor Fiona Cottrell, and the senior party figure and convicted fraudster George Cottrell, Posh George, as he's known, did require further investigation. According to finance industry sources, suspicious activity reports were raised by bankers, and they were passed to the National Crime Agency for examination. The Guardian is reporting that Richard Tice had lawyers threaten to injunct the Guardian to stop them publishing those details. That's the latest development on this. Right, just to remind you, as if you didn't know already, the 2026 World Cup is in full swing. Here at Talk, we have been celebrating in style. That's why we're giving you the chance to boost your bank balance with a massive £26,000 in tax-free cash. For a sum you won't forget, here's how to enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benedict Spence also still with me, and we're joined right now by the Deputy Online Editor of The Critic, Tom Jones. Good afternoon to you, Tom.
Good afternoon, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. We've covered very few topics today because Nigel Farage seems to have dominated absolutely everything. But one thing I definitely wanted to get to was, and it got mentioned, I suppose, really in passing, was in terms of the release of early release of prisoners, which was mentioned in Deputy PMQs today. But we did see the early release last Thursday of the leader of the Rochdale grooming gang, Shabir Ahmed, jailed for 22 years, but for some reason only serves 14. That's normal now. That's not even counted as early release. But we can't deport him. It's very, very simple. We can if we want to. Literally, MPs could take a few hours and they could They could simply have a vote to deport him. But we're told even if they did that, Pakistan would not accept him back. He's lost his British nationality. He was born in Pakistan, but he came here as a child with his family. Now, a senior Pakistani government official has basically set out their demands for what they would want in return for taking back the Rochdale rapist. What are they, and should we give in to them?
So their demands are basically, it's not just Ahmed, it's two other ringleaders of the Rochdale grooming gang who are in the same situation. Yeah. Basically, what Pakistan demanded is the return of several political dissidents who live in Britain, I think two of which they have had a formal extradition request for. One of them is a member of former Prime Minister Imran Khan's cabinet. The other is the founder of an opposition movement. Basically, Pakistan has asked that they be extradited to Pakistan, and in return, they will take these.
I mean, all these people are suspected of criminal wrongdoing, and there's legitimate cause for them to want them back, or are they want them back because basically it's political game playing?
I think it's very difficult to know, and I probably don't quite know enough about Pakistani politics to judge.
Me neither. I was hoping you would. But that's the thing. I'm wondering if our Foreign Office knows too much about any of this anyway. But the thing is, negotiating that, we shouldn't be in a position of negotiating that. They're not a big, great player, world power. We should just be, I mean, I don't understand. We don't just say, you can take this guy back or not. If you don't take him back, no visas, no one comes in. No one, that's it, none of you. No diplomats, no one coming in as a care worker, no one coming in to work in a curry house in Sheffield, not coming in.
And of course, the easiest thing in the world would be, I think since 2009, 2010, something like that, we've given Pakistan over £1 billion in foreign aid.
I mean, what's that
We
about?
also send them £300 million every year in remittances, which are completely untaxed. A small tax on
when you say remittances, what do you mean? Benefits or...?
No, this is money that people with links to Pakistan basically send back to Pakistan.
Oh, right, yeah.
A very small tax on that would actually have a huge impact on the money going into there. It would have a huge impact on the Pakistani government, the Pakistani economy. It might be quite nice to get some money back from the exchequer rather than seeing £300 million flow out of the country every year.
I don't know why we're sending a country. I mean, for goodness me, they can afford an awful lot. It's their choice. If there are people starving in their country, I'm afraid that's their problem, not ours. I'm really sorry. I've got rather ruthless on this in my old age. But let's also talk about people who do come over here who not necessarily criminals, not necessarily leading grooming gangs in Rochdale, but migrant workers coming here legitimately on visas. But once again, even when they are, honest, above-board, hard-working people, there still isn't a benefit to this country. Migrant workers, according to the latest Home Office figures, are still bringing in family members at a ratio as high as, I kid you not, 15 for every worker, despite new restrictions. Just 12 health and care visas. We're told, there's a massive shortage of people to work in these industries, mainly because they don't pay enough, because they know they can get staff cheap from abroad. They were issued to workers from Cameroon last year, just 12, but a total of 180 visas were issued to family members from the same country in the year to March. Now, I mean, that's utterly absurd. I mean, how many children have these people got? Are they bringing in every grandparent and in-law and second cousin as well? I mean, on what planet? Your husband or wife, maybe your kids if they're below 18. Other than that, no one.
I mean, yes, that is basically what they're doing. And we haven't accounted for the fiscal cost of these people, because it's very likely most of these people will be on benefits. If there are children, they'll need to be put into a school. If there are older people, they'll be given a pension and all the access to the state services. I have to say that the health and social care visa, it's a very touchy subject because people love the idea of coming over here, contributing to our elderly healthcare system. It has been, frankly, one of the most disastrous immigration systems that we've ever seen. Since it was launched, 450,000 migrants have arrived. When the scheme was launched, there were 100,000 social care vacancies. Vacancies are now above, I think, 150,000. So it simply hasn't plugged a gap at all. And I think we've had a city about the size of Bristol or a country the size of Montenegro come in to work, and the number of dependents is a country about the size of Iceland.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just absolute madness. It really is. I wish we could talk about this longer. I so appreciate you joining us. Tom Jones there from The Critic. Benedict Spence. I mean, these stats keep coming out. Every time we've got a government, whichever party says we're dealing with this, they're not.
No, they're not. And the point is the numbers have reached such a critical mass of so many people who commit these crimes and then can't be sent back for various reasons.
No, I was talking about the migrants.
Oh, you're talking about the migrants in general? Well, yeah, those are pretty bad as well. But we started talking specifically about this Pakistani thing, and the situation is that you've got a country that says, well, we're not going to take him back. There have to be ways of leveraging a country like Pakistan